Welcome, one and all, to the Ferret Raccoon podcast, episode 207. I am the Angry Raccoon.
I'm the Indigenous Owl.
I am Recess.
Bringing you the last podcast of 2022 because, as the title suggests, this is the annual best and worst of the year, obviously being 2022. We've done it for 7 years in a row, roughly now.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's been 7 years.
Boom.
And you guys have been on the last 4 consecutively.
Hey.
Really? Oh.
Yes. Yes, for the last 4
damn.
years, it's pretty much been roughly this dynamic.
Nice,
So
okay.
one more year will be 5. Let's see if you guys will be here for the 10th anniversary. Who knows in 3 years' time.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Mark diaries.
But yeah,
I have my
as
walking stick.
given the way the world is right now, yes, we probably all will be in wheelchairs and that. But yes, as we usually do every year at the end of the year, we do talk about everything that we enjoyed, that we disliked, thought was disappointing, and everything in between and all that at the end of the year. It's what we just generally do. A point I think a lot of people, mainly us, I don't know about everyone else, kind of look forward to as we kind of get to delve and kind of go into more details about some of the things that we were doing this year. And this year has been quite the interesting year, to say the least, for the most part. But obviously, I am joined by Owl and Recess on this podcast, and we're not going to waste any time really on this podcast for the most part. It's pretty late as it is. It's been snowing in England, and everyone's a bit confused for the most part because we usually don't get snow, or when we do get snow, it kind of disappears.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
it's still
Yeah.
kind of around, and that, like I said, that's kind of making people a bit confused. And
It's
there's
still here.
It's-
What?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre for the most part. But yeah, we're going to get straight into the main event. There's no trailers, there's no nothing. It is literally just us for X amount of hours talking about things from 2022. The main event, as it will. So strap in, get your snacks, do whatever you need to do to get through this podcast and hopefully enjoy it. As we're going to go into our first category, which is going to be books. This usually refers around or is about art, informative books, comics, manga, novels, basically anything you read for the most part. And I believe I'm the only person that has something for these sections. And this is kind of a weird thing for me to talk about because I only have 3 honorable mentions under art and informative, which is quite ironic given that I bought over 40 books this year, but didn't read a single one. That's how it goes sometimes.
A new record.
A new record or a new low, depending on how you want to regard that. But the 3 books I wanted to highlight are as follows. So we will mention real quick some of the rules before we actually get into these categories for the most part. So honorable mentions are only 3 selections. We are with things like best, worst, most disappointing. It's going to be 10s, although not everyone's going to have exactly 10. And yeah, I don't know if there's any other rules to specify for the most part. But yeah, we're kind of just going to go with it, and you guys will I guess we'll just work it out as we go for the most part. But my first honorable mention, my number 3, if you will, is going to be The Art of DreamWorks' The Bad Guys, which was an animated film released quite early this year, back in April. And this is the second rarest book in the world, which I luckily own, which is pretty good. Now, I'm sure some people are probably wondering what exactly I mean by that. It's obviously not the rarest book in the world. Well, based on my research and my personal theory, this film The Bad Guys, I should say, was released very early in the UK and Europe, about a month before America. And financially, the film did okay in those regions. It did way better in the rest of the world in America, which was its release a month later. So I'm actually guessing that someone at DreamWorks, maybe the management or whoever deals with merchandise, most likely had the mentality to kind of say, oh, England didn't like the film, so don't give them the Blu-ray because we did not release this. We did not get this film in distribution on Blu-ray. We didn't get any of the merchandise or any of the, like how when they do a film and they have, the novelization of the book kind of thing or the film. We didn't get any of that, including the art book as well, as I'm pretty sure they were like, yeah, don't bother with them, just release the merchandise in America because it wasn't that
No
popular.
treats. We were bad.
to some extent. If that's the case, screw them, as I think someone at DreamWorks honestly dropped the ball big time because this book did not get an official UK release as far as I have been able to find out, making it quite the rare book. So if you do want this book, I would suggest try and get it while you can, because it's already rising in price and all that kind of stuff. But to talk about the book itself, it is simply very well done for the most part. It is kind of everything you would want if you like the film, and everything that I think people kind of want from the art of books. The front cover is really stylish. It's very simple, and it's just literally just the logo with like the silhouette of the main characters. And it really does stand out despite its simplicity. It's almost a completely black book, which I kind of like. And I mean, its content is very playfully laid out for the most part, with like each character having like a specific theme for like their introduction. I do like the fact that they even included like a photo of the actual voice actor of the character just for context. Nice. You know, followed by like a few good pages of like concept art just to kind of see, you know, roughly where this character was going to end up being. You know, it talks a lot about like how they achieved this like 2D meets 3D art style, you know, like the technicals, like the lighting, and basically everything, almost every aspect that made that film what it is covered for the most part. And I'm just going to say, if you're into animation, you need this book, because they do kind of specify everything that kind of went into that film. So it's a very valuable book even in that.
Were you expecting that?
Not really.
All that detail, yeah.
Not necessarily, because with a lot of art books, sometimes they kind of gloss over things, or they don't necessarily go into that, because I can understand that's kind of, how should you put it? Not everyone's into that. Like, not everyone is going to care about, like, color rendering, you know, as just a random example. But this film goes into it. Oh, sorry, this book more accurately. You know, there's even like blueprints and floor plans of just buildings that don't even really get shown, but they had to work these things out just for the few seconds that they were seen, cool. Which is really cool. And I do appreciate that, because if you really wanted to get the most out of that film and the most out of something that you're really passionate about, at least you have that good example right there in book form. And that's why I kind of mentioned before, it's quite annoying this book isn't more readily available. Second book is going to be for the Gorillaz art book. As a big Gorillaz fan, this is a dream come true, and it's a long time coming. Once again, another like slickly laid out book. It obviously begins with Jamie Hewlett's artwork, who is the main artist behind Gorillaz, and we do get some really interesting like new pieces from him as well. I think they're mostly new. I haven't been able to properly confirm that. I believe they are. You know, kind of seeing some more like experimental and grand looks to the band, like ways you've never really seen them before. He does a lot of he kind of did this with the Humans album, where he kind of had the characters in 2D, but they were in very realistic cinematic backgrounds, which we get to see, which is pretty cool. And we do get to see like aged looks at the characters, different versions of them, which is pretty cool for the most part. Even Japanese horror posters. It's some nice stuff. And also it's kind of cool to see him like revisit eras of Gorillaz, but in how he draws them now, which is quite interesting and very odd. Obviously, this book does contain other artists' work, which is really interesting as well, as each artist has like their name kind of appear, and then you kind of see their body of work, even if it's just 1 or 2, 3 illustrations. And you know, you just get to see their art in full. It's very much, you turn the page, there it is. No text, just there. You know, you get to appreciate this. And I do love the massively varied collection of art you get to see. Like, you're going to see something you really like or really kind of gravitate towards, which I do appreciate. It doesn't just feel like, oh, here's more Gorillaz artwork. It feels like people's interpretations, because people do like comics and other just like really wild and quite saucy illustrations for the most part, which is pretty cool.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you know why they released it this year as opposed to like 5-10 years ago?
20th anniversary.
Ah, makes sense.
The band,
okay.
That's why. Although the 20th anniversary was, I believe, technically last year.
Okay.
Obviously, the book would take a while to ship and all that, and COVID was still a thing, so that's the reason why. It's kind of in celebration, although it's not officially stated for that matter. And the last one I want to talk about is going to be from the art of Eric Gillian, from the making of Despicable Me to Minions, The Secret Life of Pets, and more. This is a really hefty book that essentially details and goes into everything that Eric has done, as he's pretty much been the visual designer and like the guy behind the visuals of pretty much almost every single Illumination Entertainment film for the most part. So, and that's the thing I always liked about Illumination. A lot of people give them a lot of flack because obviously everyone hates the Minions. And that is completely understandable. They are annoying. They are irritating. and he is the guy who partly designed and created them. So I guess if you want someone to shout at, there's the name. But compared to Disney, their films are visually very interesting, and they're just very odd for the most part. It's all thanks to him. And this book is loaded with tons of like environmental and like character concept art from the man, as Eric is also kind of interviewed in this book, as they basically ask him like what his thought was, his process, how he came to this character decision. It's very interesting to kind of read and kind of just hear like a professional kind of go, well, I made the character like this because of XYZ or ABC. It's really cool to have, and like you really do get to see a lot of his character designs and his experimentation, and just see explanations as to why things in the Illumination, let's say, world are as wild as they are. For example, I always think back to in Despicable Me, Groot's car. It's like this weird silver tank pointed thing, and there's a reason as to why it looks like that, where the inspiration comes from that. It is really cool. The level of detail is really just amazing to look at, because even when you see an alternate take of a character, I can honestly see someone being inspired by that concept and kind of making their own character, or kind of figuring something out thanks to his writing of him saying like, oh, well, the character needed to be this, so I did that. So I think it's once again another very valuable book, which I think is really cool. And everything is displayed just so lovingly. There's just pages of just concept art, and each character roughly kind of has their own page and their own description, which I really do like. The one thing that is kind of odd about this film, it's not necessarily negative, but something I noticed in doing research in it, is that the film Sing 2 isn't present in this book. Despite Sing 2 coming out before Minions Rise of Gru, yet Minions Rise of Gru is featured in this book as the last film.
Ooh, interesting.
So I'm not sure what's happened there. I don't know if this was just like... Because I know technically Sing 2 is a 2001 film. Sorry, not 2001 film. 2021 film, sorry. So I'm not sure what's happened there. I don't know if it was like the film was made and then... I don't know. This is not like a sly or like me trying to like say it's a problem or anything. It's just a bit odd that it didn't feature that. Maybe he didn't necessarily work on this. I don't know. It's a bit bizarre.
It does seem odd though. Yeah. I wonder what the reason is.
It is odd because like literally canonically a film was skipped. Like I know technically Rise of Gru was meant to come up before Sing 2. I think that's the only reason, but obviously COVID happened and that film got pushed back for a while. And it just kept getting pushed back for whatever reason. So, because I know technically Sing 2 is the newest film.
Okay.
Despite being released before that film. Not really sure what's going on there. But I just kind of hope that some of that concept artwork does get to see the light of day. But we'll talk about that film later. Moving on to our next section. I think this is one of the biggest ones we usually talk about. And that is, of course, going to be films. This is the one that, we're always... going into details on and talking about, and it's probably the main thing of the podcast, so this should be interesting, especially just to hear everyone else's thoughts and films and all that. And I believe we are going to be starting with Owl on this one for her films feature length, I believe. All
of them feature
all right, let's hear them.
All right, so the first list, I'm going to go through my honourable mentions. It's not in like any order or anything like that, so I'm just going to go through it from top to bottom.
Fair enough.
Okay, so my first film is Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Ooh.
It's my honourable mentions. I enjoyed this film. I thought it was a decent watch, but it didn't quite make it to my favourite.
Wait. Honourable mentions?
Yeah.
What?
Yes. I'm going to start some argument.
Right, keep it clean, all right? We're not even 15 minutes in.
Basically, so I liked the whole story plot of it, pretty much being quite straightforward. So I'll kind of go into like the basic premise of it. So it's about like it's an Asian family that own a laundrette. And basically, so it's obviously it's got two parents, a grandparent, and then their daughter. And the daughter, she is in a relationship with a girl, but like the mum doesn't want her dad to know that. So, well, the grandfather to know that because of like obviously a generational thing and stuff like that. So she always introduced the daughter's girlfriend as just the friend. And then like it goes into the
awkward.
It's a bit awkward. And like then it goes into so after that, then they go into like a tax office, I think it is, and like basically they have like a bit of issues with paying for taxes and stuff like that. But I'm not going to go into any more than just that. That is like pretty much the first like 15 minutes of the film, and then it literally goes really bizarre after that. And but I've got to say, like, the film definitely is very experimental and very creative, but for some reason, I don't know what it is, I feel like with the whole, the thing is, I don't want to say it because I feel like I'm going to spoil it by saying it, that's the thing. But there's an element of the film that I feel like it is a bit overused, so I didn't really enjoy it. I feel like it's one of those films where I feel like it kind of, it had a straightforward point, but it was a bit too much to bear during the film. I felt like it was a bit like, okay, did it really have to go through all that just to get to a point? I don't know. I kind of felt like that.
I kind of agree with you actually on that point.
Yeah. Like the storyline was great. It was straightforward, straight to the point, but it was just, I think, it kind of went on a tangent and then kind of came back, I felt like. But overall, it was still a decent watch. I'm not gonna put the film down. So that's my first pick. The second one is the animated film Belle. Actually, me and you went to go see this.
Oh yeah, we did, yeah.
This is another film about it's basically about a young girl. She is high schooler, and she basically has, this film is kind of like Summer Wars, where it's got like the whole avatar and virtual reality and that kind of thing. So she has like an avatar in like this virtual reality world where she's basically like a singer, and she's very well liked, and everyone loves her. The funny thing is, the character that she is in the virtual reality, it kind of reminds me of a character. It's not actually from an anime, but it's from a thing called Vocaloids. So it kind of reminds me of one of the characters called Luca. She's got like long pink hair and blue eyes. So it kind of, I don't know if it took inspiration from that, but pretty much that is the story. And like, it's like, so she, and in her real life, like her virtual reality life is going so well, but like in real life, it's a bit miserable for her, I guess. And in one point of the film, like there's a kind of mysterious beast looking thing in the virtual reality world. And we're kind of wondering like, who is the identity of this beast? And, but I'll leave it there. I felt like, the reason why I put it on my honorable mentions is because I kind of forgot about it after watching it. That's the only thing. Like the film was visually stunning, but I just kind of forgot about it. But it was I still enjoyed it from what I remember. And then the final one of my honorable mentions is Good Luck Leo Grande. This film wasn't actually advertised that much. I actually saw it on a poster at a train station on the way to work. So I thought, this film actually looks really interesting. And so I managed to get around to go and seeing it. And again, this film is about a woman. So she's recently widowed, and she's like in her mid-50s, and she basically hires an escort. And basically she wants to kind of spice up like her it's really weird to say it, but like her romantic life, because like obviously she's been widowed, and like there's certain things that I think she missed out on in her marriage and stuff like that, which that's why she's got this escort. And basically like the whole motive is kind of, I guess when she's in the middle of she's kind of explaining to the escort like what it was that she missed out on in her marriage. And like he obviously listens to her, but like when you watch the film, you kind of realize that she's she's kind of lonely, and like she just kind of needed someone to talk to. And I felt like I like the fact that they kind of portrayed that in the film, even though like the story itself is kind of like, it is a bit much to say in detail, so I'm trying to keep it as polite as possible. But yeah, just to say the least, like when I actually came out of the film, I was like, oh yeah, you know what, she like him, like even the escort kind of needed someone to talk to, and she needed someone to talk to. So it's kind of like one of those films where I felt like, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of kind of everyone needs someone to talk to. I feel like it's one of those films. So going into my best and favourite feature length films, the first one being Sonic. Now this is my favourite film of 2022, just because it was the best cinema experience I had. It was literally like, so the characters are all great, you know, new additions and stuff, but in the end I'm not going to go into story, but it was funny because like, right, coming towards the end, everyone was just all sitting there in our seats, and we're just like, they made like an announcement, like I heard the woman, she was talking about something, and I was like, oh no, and everyone was just like screaming, and then when the thing was revealed, and I was like, oh my god, and everyone just started screaming. It was funny. So yeah, that's what kind of made the film the best experience. Like I was like, best film of the year. And yeah, the film, again, I felt like it was actually the sequel was more superior than the actual first film as well. I felt like it was really good. The next film is Dragon Ball Superhero. I think I explained about my experience on the previous podcast, so you can go listen to the experience there. But let's just say I went to go see it in 4DX. I feel like the film, for this film, it was good because it used elements from Dragon Ball rather than Dragon Ball Z. So like the Red Ribbon Army was back in this film, and I thought, I was actually quite surprised to actually see that they would actually be back in an actual Dragon Ball film. Since like obviously they haven't really been spoken of since kind of Dragon Ball, I guess. Usually, I mean, there were some elements of it in Dragon Ball Z, but not really like expanded upon as much as like the big antagonist. Yeah, I felt like this film, again, the story wise, it was good. The action was a bit like there was one part in the film where after the whole action scene actually happened, I literally heard one woman in the crowd go, "Was that it?" And I was like, damn, the salt was real. I was like, damn. But yeah, no, overall, like, and I do want to mention this as well, like Piccolo got his time to shine. Like
good.
he's always like the side character, but he got his time to shine. And I
okay.
feel like I really like that part about the aspect about the film. But overall, like out of this film and Broly, I enjoyed Broly a bit more just because of the action. But I enjoyed Dragon Ball Superhero more so for the plot than the action.
Fair enough.
What, 20, 30 years later, Piccolo gets his time.
Yeah, he actually gets his time to shine. So finally, okay. So the next film is Elvis. This is a biopic of Elvis. I haven't really. I listened to his songs and stuff. I'm not like a huge fan, but like just like kind of learning about his story and everything was really interesting, and it was actually very emotional, quite a sad film as well. I almost shed a few tears watching that. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed it quite a bit. One
thing I want to say really quickly about Elvis was I did happen to see an article regarding this. The guy who played Elvis, he took the role so seriously apparently that he just didn't speak to his family for 3 years.
Really?
Whoa.
I don't know what's wrong with him. That's a bit extreme.
Whoa.
But
okay,
I just was like, really, dude? Like, just gonna alienate your family for Elvis?
Talk about getting in the like spirit of things.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't know what that was about, but I thought I'd throw that in there.
All right, and the next film is Nope. So we went to go see, me and Raccoon went to go see this, and I think this film was really good, and actually like it was very unsettling with certain parts of the film for sure. Like I felt like one part of the film like was more unsettling than the actual main event of the film.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We can probably discuss that off the podcast. I don't want to spoil it. But so it was quite unsettling. But it's funny, actually. I did some research on Nope. And actually, apparently, someone said it actually stands for Not of Planet Earth, apparently.
But also, apparently, Jordan Peele has said it does not stand for that.
Oh.
Interestingly enough. He says that's not what it stands for. I think it literally stands for Nope. As in, like, no.
Oh, no, just actually Nope.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But then again, Jordan Peele himself, he welcomes everyone's interpretation to his films. He never really shuts down anything, but he said that that's not what it means.
Oh,
if the fans say it's true, it's true.
Yeah, it's not of Planet Earth.
Listen here, Jordan.
And then the final film on my best and favourite is Turning Red. I really enjoyed this animation. It was good. I really liked the fact that it was set in 2002, and it was I had that nostalgic feeling of like. I was so surprised to see the Tamagotchi being featured in it. It was like stuff that we millennials grew up with.
Without being too overbearing, might I add as well. It didn't feel like just a nostalgia trip. You know, like, oh, hey, remember this? It just was like very much in the time, which is, I think, kind of cool.
Yeah. And it was quite funny how like they portrayed like them kind of like fangirling over a boy band. I thought that was quite funny because that was what most girls were doing back at that time, which was quite cool. But yeah, Again, I don't really like going into plots. I feel like I'm just going to spoil everything. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this film, for sure. And then my worst feature-length film is The Batman. Ooh. I suffered watching through that film.
I can hear people clicking off already.
Yeah, I don't even care. Because it was absolute shite. Like... Literally, luckily I didn't go to cinema to see this. Like, luckily my friend, we watched it on online stream. So
if you'd have gone to the cinema, would you have walked out?
Yeah, I would have. I definitely would have walked out. 100%. I would have walked out.
I want my money back.
Yeah, it was just too long. I couldn't. If it was like a 2-hour film, sure. But like 3 hours. All of us in the room. Like it was me and 3 other people were watching it. And we were just sitting there. It's like, when is this going to actually end? We were all just sitting there. We actually had to take breaks. That's how long the film was and how stressed we were all getting. That's
never a good sign.
Yeah, we all had to take breaks. And like, like the atmosphere of the film was great, but it's just, I don't know, the acting didn't really feel great. I was just like, yeah, I couldn't really do it. I mean, Robert Pattinson's played some really excellent characters. Like, I really liked his role in Tenet. Even though I hated Tenet, but like I loved his character Neil in Tenet.
Yeah.
And I really liked his role in Lighthouse.
Lighthouse.
As well. He did an
Also want to throw in
excellent job.
Good Time as well.
That's what I was going to say.
Fantastic
Yes.
film.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's
That one.
played character roles in much better films, in my opinion. But yeah, it's one of those films I'm
I agree. It was long. I fell asleep in the cinema.
Oof.
But that's what I'll say.
Yikes. And yeah. Oh wait, no. And then sorry, I almost forgot. Most disappointing feature-length films. So I'm gonna breeze through this. I'm not even gonna go into plot. The first one is The Woman King. I'll quickly just say a little bit of why, because like there's certain parts of the film that apparently it was saying it was like on true events, but like even doing research on it, apparently like all of it wasn't even true, half of it. So I'm just like, oof, that's
Strike one.
And like again, talking about acting as well, like it's not really John Boyega's strongest role. I can't lie, he's played better roles. I felt like I preferred his role in Attack on the Block. Like he played that role so well, but this film, I just felt like his character was a bit jarring, and he just didn't add much to the film. But anyway, I digress. Next film is Black Adam. It's just
you've seen that? Wow.
Yeah, it's Dwayne Johnson being Dwayne Johnson. I think I'll end it there. And the last film is Jurassic World. I think it's Dominion. Yeah, Dominion. Yeah. That film, I was actually excited for this film, but unfortunately, it was really, really just lackluster for me. Just because, like the out of this trilogy, like the first one was the best one with the Indominus Rex.
I would disagree, but okay.
Oh, okay.
I do not like any of the new Jurassic Park films, and you can find that out, shameless promotion, because we did an audio commentary track on that, which was my first time watching that film, and I was not happy.
Okay, fair enough.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, you can go find it on the channel.
Angry Raccoon. You're angry at the film.
Live up to my name.
But yeah, no, I felt like this film was definitely lackluster, just because like the main threat. Okay, I don't even care now. I'm gonna actually say what the main threat was. So it's basically, usually in the trilogy, they always have like some sort of hybrid dinosaur. But like in this film, it was just like locusts that basically like are on fire, and they basically cause like damage to the environment and killing off the dinosaurs.
No one really understood that. It seemed like they kind of just took an actual fact, because yes, locusts do cause issues for lots of crop and other things and that, but they kind of just left it at that.
Yeah.
And kind of didn't develop it, because there was so many ideas thrown about. Like there's an interesting concept of like, oh, dinosaurs are just here now, but they don't, that's it. They just kind of put full stop and then just wrote the film. Which, it's bizarre.
I guess kudos on them like for trying something new, but
I would disagree still, because like it's still a Jurassic Park film, and you can even argue that in Jurassic Park 2 they did the same thing at the end when the Jurassic Park escapes and he's in the city. So it's and I think even the ending of the second film was complete stupidness with like it just gets very farcical. But no one liked Dominion. Yeah, and I'm it's one of the biggest failures this year. So
I felt like the only like best part was literally like one of the battles between like the Tyrannosaurus. There was another dinosaur. I forgot the actual name of the species. It had like really long nails, looked kind of like a bird. And then like the other one is the Gigantosaurus. So that was like probably the best part of the film, but the rest of it was just yikes. But yeah, that's it. That's my end of my list.
Films for this year. So I guess it's my turn now. Now, I didn't really watch a lot of films this year, unfortunately. There's lots I wanted to, but I just didn't really get around to it. So I got 7 to talk about for the most part. I think so. Number 7, I'm going to kick it off with Belle. I really enjoyed this film by Maruto Hashuda. This film was originally released in 2021, but we didn't get it until 2022, thanks to All the Anime... I was about to say productions, but All the Anime, the company that essentially released a lot of anime in this country, which massive props to them for doing that. I think this film does take very clear inspiration from 1956's like fairy tale and even Disney's like 1991 adaptation of Beauty and the Beast, as I think his version is quite interesting in a lot of ways. And I think one of the elements I really like about it is kind of like the constant theme of almost like contrast and like kind of back to forth or differences. as he does like revisit his like fascination with digital worlds, because he did Summer Wars, he did the first Digimon movie, and all that kind of stuff. And it is interesting how half of the film, once again, kind of going back to the theming of halving and contrast and differences, takes place in that metaverse known as You, which is like graphically impressive as a world. It's complicated, but it's complicated at a distance, but I think it's also very simple in its design. And it is kind of cool, I think, to have our main character, Belle, or Suzu, kind of like start out as being like the most famous person in You, but, you know, much like with most, I guess, twists or whatever you can say, or classic twists in films, you know, she's like the complete polar opposite in the real world, like being someone who's not in the best place right now, you know, like literally being disconnected, ironically, despite connecting so many people in her counterparts. And I think the film's strengths, once again, are those contrasts, mainly with the relationship she builds with the character known as the Dragon, who kind of just wants to burn everything down. And their connection, I think, is a real highlight in the film. Like those softer, tender moments where we kind of figure things out and kind of deal with these very small situations are great. Even just how the film does start out as the most grandest thing ever. Like this is something that's, you know, the metaverse of You is like everyone has it, everyone knows it, but yet the story boils down to something so small and so important at the end of the day, which I kind of really liked that aspect. Number 6 is going to go to The House, released this year. Lots of films are called The House, lots of things are referred to The House. This is directed by several people. I'm probably going to butcher their names. It's directed by Emma D. Saufer and Maka James Rose, Nikki Linderoth von Barra, and Paloma Bariza. This is an anthology of 3 shorts, all revolving around a house, all in stop motion. And they're essentially very classic feeling horror stories, all themed around chasing or gaining happiness and what that costs you without spoiling too much. I'll go into quick details because it does need a little bit more context. So the first story, which is titled And Heard Within, A Lie Is Spun, essentially follows, I think, a Victorian family kind of living in some sense of poverty, who are essentially given a house by a mysterious architect. And things kind of just unfold from there, as we do see the story from like Mabel, the second oldest daughter's perspective, as things are just straight up unsettling in this short, as they're given this house that's way too big, generally uncomfortable, when you get a lot of shots where you just see just how big the building is, and just you can hear the sounds of them working on the house, but the moment Mabel is looking at them, they're just looking at her. You know, stuff that's really weird. It's very nightmarish for the most part, and I actually kind of hate it for the most part. The second story, titled Then Lost Is Truth That Can Be Won, follows a developer who, I should mention, everyone in the first story is a human, everyone in the second story is a rat, renovating this same house in order to sell it, and he essentially is kind of dealing with its infestation of bugs. The developer himself is a very interesting and relatable character. You can kind of feel his struggles, but something's just not right with him for the most part. And things do take a turn when we're introduced to these 2 other characters, these oddly large rat characters with like the creepiest voices ever. Like Raspy does not even begin to like describe what these characters sounds like. And when this story of him trying to sell the house and kind of dealing with these people or whatever they are, the ending is quite unfortunate, to say the least. Like, it definitely leaves you thinking for the most part. And the final story, which is titled Listen Again and Seek the Sun, follows cats in the same house, mainly the character Rosa, who is like the landlord of this house, and she's desperately trying to like fix this house up. You know, her tenants, they kind of just won't pay the rent, and there's a real sense of frustration that she kind of feels with, you know, wanting to fix this house. It means so much to her. But you have the looming presence of the fact that the world is just flooded. Not explained what's going on, which I do kind of like. And I think it is visually the most, how shall I put it? It's the most emotional one and the most trippy one to some extent. And I do like where it ends and kind of how it wraps things up for the most part. And I mean, just to generally talk about the film, I think it's fantastic. The stop motion animation is wonderful. Each one has a really interesting like style and like what do you call it? yeah, I guess style for the most part, and it does have a pretty interesting cast for the most part. I'm just trying to remember some of the people because I was actually quite surprised by some of the voice cast when I actually looked it up. Like Mina Goff is in there as well. Most people know of her. I was very surprised to find out that Jarvis Cocker, lead singer of Pulp, the band The Pulp, is actually voices the architect, as well as Helen Bonner Akata. I was mispronounced how you say her name. She's also in there as well, and some other pretty.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they're not like themselves, I guess, if that makes sense, which I always like that kind of concept. But I'd highly recommend this film because no one's really talking about it, and I hate that because I think it's one of the better films to come out. And I do like how this film is very much up for interpretation.
Yeah.
Maybe, although that is the debate with this film that people are discussing is there any actual real meaning behind some of the things? And I remember seeing, it's bad English. I remember I saw something that someone pointed out that actually made the second story even more horrifying, and it's a very tiny detail which I'll tell you about afterwards.
Ooh, okay.
But
I was very uncomfortable watching it, and I think they did that really well because it was the atmosphere was just very eerie, and I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So I was always like on the edge of my seat.
And some of the shots are just horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like legitimately, like I don't like that.
Very uncomfortable, but enjoyable as
Yes,
well.
it's enjoyable as well. Yeah, which is good. Number 5 is gonna go to Turning Red, directed by Domi Shi. This is her directorial debut, which is a current theme with all my films. Almost every film on this list is someone's first directed film. Everyone who did The House, that's their first directorial debut.
Oh wow!
Okay.
Turning Red, one of Disney's strongest films in a long time. And it's so interesting, mainly because of just how simple it is. At the end of the day, a little girl turns into a giant red panda whenever she's emotional. Full stop. And they do it so well with lots of other themes and great concepts for the most part. I do like how speedy the animation can be to kind of match May, the main character's like zany personality and youthful energy compared to so many other characters. And I do think the characters are very believable for the most part, especially when you're tackling something coming from 2002 setting. I think there's a really great sense of like relationship in this film as well, with like May's like friendship group, as they're like so tightly knit and very supportive, and they kind of serve as like the comedic roles for the most part in this film, which I think is great. And they do kind of really play around with the whole idea of, well, what if someone was a giant cuddly, you know, red panda, even just with like people just being like, oh, just so fluffy and so cute and all that kind of stuff. Especially when you have like with the relationship between May and her mother Ming, who kind of acts sort of as the main villain. She kind of does what's best for May, but in the worst possible ways. And it's an interesting conflict, which you don't see too often, because typically the mother or the parents are just the bad guy in some other Disney films and that. But you kind of understand where she's coming from, whether you agree with her or not, which is a concept which they could have very easily screwed up, but I think they managed to nail pretty well. Interestingly enough, for those of you who have seen it, there is the original beginning of the film was cut because it was too long. And I'll say this because it is technically cut content. The original beginning of the film actually took place in the past, where you actually get to see Ming as a more controlling mother as they get ready for a photo shoot. It's about a 2-minute scene, but it's very interesting that it got cut. So look that up if you can, if you've seen the film and want to, I just want a little bit more from that film. At the end of the day, it's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it. The world itself is very beautiful. It's nice to see a very colourful and animated like Toronto. And I do like how the film plays around with scale and perspective in some very sneaky and more obvious ways towards the end of the film. But yeah, really strong film. Absolutely loved it. Sticking with animation, we have my number 4 spot, which is going to be for The Bad Guys, directed by Perry Pefil, another directorial debut from him. Absolutely loved this film. I think this film got a little bit of somewhat flack for the most part. I think because I do have a bit of an issue with some film critics where they kind of don't view animated films as films, and they kind of just go, oh, it's for children, whatever, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff.
So wrong. Like, why?
Yeah, I do have issues with that, and I think they tend to either just write it off as a kid's film or just be extra mean to it sometimes. Not always the case, but this is a film that takes a lot of inspiration from the likes of things like Pulp Fiction, Lupin the Third, and it kind of makes it its own thing in a near perfect way. Like, the animation in this film is some of the best I've seen in a long time. Like, the fight and chase scenes are simply perfect, in my opinion. Like, buttery smooth, great pacing, great timing, great energy, and just generally really fun. Like, they really just nailed that aspect. The film boldly starts with a scene with two characters basically establishing themselves and talking, and there's like no cuts, which is quite bold to have an animated film start like that. And the characters are really lovable in every single way. They've got like very fun designs. They're all voiced expertly, and there's a good cast as well, which I kind of want to talk about because it's not the biggest cast of all time, because you have the Big Bad Wolf, who I think he is literally meant to be the Big Bad Wolf from the actual Grimm fairy tales, voiced by Sam Rockwell. You also have Awkwafina voicing Mrs. Tarantula, who is kind of like their tech expert, like hacker and that, which makes sense because you've got so many legs. You've got Craig Robinson as Mr. Shark, who is the master of disguise. They say in the film that his greatest achievement was that he stole the Mona Lisa disguised as the Mona Lisa, which is a really great joke. You have ZZ Bates, who voices Diane Foxington, who is kind of like the governor of California, which I find really funny. And of course, one of my all-time favorite people of all time, Richard Ayoade, voicing Professor Rupert Marmalade IV, who is a guinea pig, and he plays that character perfectly. That is perfect casting, in my opinion. There are some other great characters and concepts in that, but I was
going to say you missed one out.
Who's that?
Dwayne Johnson playing Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, that was honestly like the weirdest part of the film, when you see like this human just come in and I'm joking, there are humans. That joke doesn't work because there are humans in this world, weirdly enough. It's not just everyone's an animal, which you very rarely see, because they never really address the fact that there's just talking animals. Don't know what that's about, but I think the only downside I do have with this film is that I think the story is really safe. It's aimed at children, and I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity for them not to do slightly more references or kind of have something a little bit more in the vein of what they're clearly referencing, being something like Ocean's 11. I mean, Sam Rockwell was basically doing an impersonation of George Clooney as Mr. Wolf, which I think is quite clever, but everything else is fantastic, and it kind of makes up for that shortcoming for the most part. And it's such a stylish film with a lot of personality. And I'm glad it's done as successful as it is, being the second highest grossing animated film of 2022.
Ooh.
Which is awesome. Which brings me on to my third film, which is going to be Sing 2, directed by Garth Jennings, which is the highest grossing animated film of 2022, and I believe the fourth highest grossing film of the year, which is quite interesting. This is a vast improvement from the first film, because I did not like Sing 1. I thought it was awful. Visually, this film is super impressive. Like, the lighting, the water, and everything is just super realistic. Like, the third characters themselves look appropriately furry and fluffy, and the world is so much more realized for the most part, which I really do like, because before it was just kind of it could have been anywhere, but you kind of get a clear sense of a world. They clearly took cues from Zootopia and kind of figured out how you make a world thematically work with I guess animals. And it's a long film, and I do like how it does jump back and forth between other characters and other stories, which kind of helps keep the film involved and kind of keeps things fresh, as the main concept revolves around Buster Moon, who kind of owns his theater production, but he kind of wants to take it to the next level, so he kind of enlists or tries to see I completely forget the character's name, Jimmy Crystal, who's kind of the Simon Cowell-ish kind of character, and through altercations they try and get this other singer, Clay, who's kind of since been retired since the for reasons. And it's good that we kind of have certain characters do certain things and kind of team up and do all that kind of stuff. But I think the only real downside with that is that a lot of the new characters do get introduced who I think are really interesting. They kind of are just there, and they don't really do anything once they're introduced. For example, there is one character called Nushi, who is a breakdancer, and she's a Lynx character. And she kind of meets up with I completely forget that character's name. Oh, I'm completely forgetting all the characters' names. Johnny, who's the gorilla. Yeah, she kind of just agrees to help him, and that's kind of it. We never really figure out who she is, why she's here, why she's in this big major city. Some other characters as well. It doesn't quite work in some sense. Even the main character or the main person they're trying to get, Clay, he kind of just agrees to go with them, and we never get that scene where he's like, oh, okay, I'll come with. He's just kind of on board, and it feels like we missed a scene for the most part. But other than that, I think all the characters do stand out really well because they've got such wild designs for the most part. Like, for example, just look up the character Suki Lane. She's just like some weird, tall, skinny lady dog character. It's just like, what? Her proportions are ridiculous, but she's a character I really like. The voice cast I think is really good as well for the most part. We obviously have Scarlett Johansson as Ash, who is the punk rock guitarist. We've got Taron Egerton as Johnny, who's the gorilla. We also have some of the newer characters as well, which I don't want to spoil too many of them, like singer Hazley also voices Portia Crystal, and she does kind of like her best Harley Quinn impersonation, which is really bizarre. She's a really good actor, a voice actor. I don't know, she needs to be in more things than that. Excuse me. There's also some two people who also reprise their roles in this film, being directors Wes Anderson and Edgar Wright are in this film, who just do a cameo voice again this time around. So really interesting stuff. I highly recommend it. It's a film that took me by surprise because I didn't like the previous film. I don't really like jukebox musicals, but I think the songs they covered were pretty good, and I think some of the visuals that follow them are actually really amazing for the most part. Number 2 is going to be for Pinocchio, directed by Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafsson. They really put their own stamp on this story, as it feels very familiar yet fresh at the end of the day. And it's very interesting to have a slightly more modern day set version of Pinocchio, as it takes place in Italy during 1930s. Okay. So if you know your history, you'll know why that's a big deal, because certain things are ever shifting and ever important as they jump in and out of being very relevant in very interesting ways, which I don't want to spoil. It's very creative in how it deals with aspects which I think have most likely been brought up with Pinocchio, like the whole idea of immortality, because Pinocchio is going to live forever. People around him are going to die. And it does address that in a very interesting way. And of course, the stop motion is top tier. I think Jim Henson Company actually did a lot of the production and a lot of the animation for this, so that goes to show. And I think the character designs are very wonderfully exaggerated for the most part, which I really like. Almost, I'm not 100% sure if it is intentional, but everyone almost has a puppet-like, toy-like look to them.
Okay.
Where, for example, Geppetto's beard, it never really has movement to it. It's kind of just fixated on his face, which obviously, because it is an actual puppet that they are animating, elements like that I really do like. It is partly a musical, although I think the songs are just okay, and I think the cast does do a brilliant job, because once again, we do have interesting people like Ewan McGregor, who voices Sebastian J. Cricket, who is obviously the Talking Cricket in this. You have Christopher Waltz, who I think most people know. He's as Count Volop, who is, I guess, the ringmaster and the guy who kind of owns the circus for the most part. Tilda Swinton plays two characters in this who are kind of the same in some sense. Finn Wolfhard, who most people know from Stranger Things, he's in there as well. And Cate Blanchett as well, who plays probably one of the most interesting characters. I won't spoil who she voices, but it's very, very clever what she does in that film, but I don't want to spoil it. And number 1, of course, is going to go to Nope, directed by Jordan Peele.
Nope.
Not a Planet Earth.
Truly a very creative film and very inspiring for the most part. The mood and tone of this film are king, as throughout it is ominous and chilling and just uncomfortable, and it never really lets you relax.
No,
from
definitely
the very from the very beginning, it is you don't know what's going to happen, what's going on. It's great, and there are so many details and concepts that do have you thinking, and I think that's what I do like about Jordan Peele's direction, is that his films are universal in so many ways. If people want to analyze and come up with their own theories, they can, but if people want to just enjoy technically a simple film, they can, because it is very simple.
Yeah.
It's a very small film. It's also a very intentionally quiet film. And something a lot of people don't notice is there's very rarely any music in this film. And they do intentionally mess with you. I mean, and for a horror film as well, you actually care about the characters. You're not just like, oh, I hope they die or whatever. Like, they actually do feel like real performances thanks to, like, the fantastic performances. The sound design, like I mentioned before, is fantastic. Because I later did find out that the guy who did the sound design for this film also did the sound design for Under the Skin, which is another incredibly unsettling and horrifying film starring Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
If you like Nope, definitely watch Under the Skin.
That was a weird one.
It was a very weird film. Very good.
Yeah.
One of the best like British films to come out in a long time. And visually as well, the film is just odd. Like, it's very striking and unusual, and even when things do get explained, you're like, what? Like, it's very abstract in a good way, and I can kind of understand why people didn't enjoy this film, because they felt like they were lied to some extent, because they wanted they wanted certain film, but they didn't get it. But, you know, some people
Nope.
Nope, you're not gonna understand it.
some people are just a bit ridiculous. But I've only got one other film to talk about in terms of most disappointing, and that's going to be for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, this film could have been so much more coming from Sam Raimi, and although there are some great visuals and great moments, I think it's a very misleading film. It doesn't really do what it says, and I think it was just like very disappointing for the most part. But, you know,
I heard it was quite dark.
It was dark.
Kind of, yeah. It was dark in some aspects, but I wouldn't. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, I need to just see outright violence and that. But I think the way they went about being darker was kind of odd.
Okay.
Like to the point where it was like almost too extreme sometimes, where you're like, oh my god.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know.
Right.
Was I the only one that was like, I want more.
I mean, to some extent, I do think they should have pushed a little bit more in that direction, but I understand they want children to still see this film.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So
I can't really.
I think we're a long way away from like outright horror Marvel films, but we'll see.
It was probably what, a 12A at most?
I think so.
So yeah,
Oh,
okay. That makes sense.
I think so for the most part. Recess, I believe you have your films now.
Yes. Okay. So honorable mentions. I'll start with X.
Oh yeah.
So a horror movie. I'm big on horrors. So this is set in Texas in the 1970s.
Oh, okay.
So like a group of, I would say friends, but I actually don't think all of them are friends.
Okay.
But a group of filmmakers, they want to make a movie. So they rent accommodation, kind of like in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And that accommodation acts as the movie set. So unknowing to their hosts, so the people that they're renting from, the movie that they want to make is an adult, like, erotic movie.
Yeah. Okay.
And eventually they do get caught by the hosts, and then shit goes down, basically.
Okay.
It does feature Mia Goth, Kid Cudi, and Jenna Ortega, I think her last name is. Mm-hmm. But what I really liked was Mia Goth's acting. So she actually played two characters in this, which I didn't realise until the end of the movie. So I thought she did that really well. And they do actually, like, going back into the movie, they do hint at her playing both characters. So she plays a younger character and then a much older character.
Okay.
And I think there's a point where the older character says to the younger one, like, oh, not in so many words, but, oh, I kind of used to look exactly like you.
Right.
So I thought that was quite clever. And there is a kind of sense of jealousy and also longing from that older character to the younger character. The older Mia kind of makes a move on the younger Mia, which was interesting. But it does kind of explain that. The old woman, she explains that she hasn't really had like an intimate relationship for a while.
Okay.
She sees that they're making an erotic movie. She kind of wants some of the action.
Sorry.
I won't spoil it or say any more on that, but it's a horror movie. There are silly elements, but I also feel that it was quite done in a realistic way. Like, this thing could have happened.
Right. Yeah, right.
So I thought that was really clever. Quite refreshing as well. Next honourable mention is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So it's interesting hearing Raccoon's view on this. But I loved how it delved into the darker side of things. It was very horrific compared to like other Marvel movies.
Sure.
Part of that is because you know, there's the undead character. I think fans are calling him like Zombie Strange.
Okay.
So Zombie Strange is dead. His flesh is decaying, which looks really cool. But what I really liked about this character was the cape. So I think normally Doctor Strange's cape is a cloak of levitation. So with the undead character, it's made up of like demon creatures. And I think that looks really, really cool.
Yeah.
However, for me, that was only like a small part of the movie, and they could have like pushed it a lot more. When you were saying, like, talking about that raccoon, I kind of get like the age bracket. Yes, okay, 12A. They do kind of need to accommodate for the younger audience as well.
Fair enough.
But I'd love to see like any edits that they cut out.
If there are any, yeah.
If they exist, that would be really cool.
you got Sam Raimi.
This is it.
You know,
Like,
horror master to some extent, and you didn't really utilize that. Like, granted, there are like some references to Evil Dead and some of his stylings, which I think were pretty great, and I do like that aspect. Even the section you were talking about, I think that's one of the best things that I think they've arguably done in a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, they really could have done more for the most part. I mean, I still like the film. It's most disappointing. It's not worst. But yeah, I see what you mean.
But I guess on that note as well about doing more, the introduction of the Illuminati. So including Professor X, Reed Richards from Fantastic Four, and then Captain Marvel. The fight scene with Wanda, it was like over in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was such a disappointment. Like, they could have pushed that so much more. And I feel that each character could have... There could have been a focus on more of their powers, more of their abilities when fighting Wanda.
Yeah.
But that didn't really happen. It was just way too short.
I think the reason why is because they're most likely going to show up in other films. I think that's the kind of idea is you're getting a tease. Because I think the guy who does play Mr. Fantastic, he is most likely going to be Mr. Fantastic in the film that does come out.
Right.
So for them to kind of be, let's say, so brief with his character in this film, it's kind of like, oh, we're going to see him
Teaser.
in this film. Yeah, it is kind of that to some extent. I think naming it the Illuminati was, I think, really stupid. But because they're basically the Avengers, for anyone who's confused. It's the Avengers, but they're called the Illuminati here, you know, because all powerful and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I kind of understand. That scene was definitely like the one where I'm just like, what? Like, it was just very extreme at points. I mean... And even the ending of the film itself was just hilarious. Like, I thought the ending was hilarious. Like, the final shot was just like...
No spoilers.
Most people have seen that shot, but it is quite funny, I think.
I was going to say, I don't know if it's just this movie, because I feel that it's also in a lot of the superhero movies when there are a lot of different characters. Each character, they don't really get the chance to shine and actually showcase their ability. So I don't know if it was just a timing thing, but it kind of makes sense. If they're going to release movies, TV shows with these characters in it, okay, yes, acting as a teaser, see how that reception goes, and then,
Well, it kind of has to work because they're not going to back down on the Fantastic Four film. They have to make it.
The third remake. We'll see.
Ooh, shots fired.
Well, this will technically be the first time Disney Marvel would have done anything with Fantastic Four.
Okay.
Because Fox had it for a while.
Yeah, sure.
So it's going to be like a complete reset. But Fantastic Four, I mean, they've been teasing Fantastic Four since Loki. So, you know, just to get more technical. But yeah.
So that's my honourable mentions.
Okay.
Best favourite feature length now. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I can't believe it. No, it can't be. It has to be on honourable mentions. Sorry, then.
It's different. There's a lot going on. And I think it doesn't really fall into one specific category. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be heavily focused on like romance or like that romantic side, but I would kind of class it as a romantic movie.
Okay.
There were strong elements of love, not just like intimate, but also
like
family, relative, accepting, like self-love as well.
Yeah.
But then also there's that sci-fi element to it. I don't want to go into it too much, but I guess accessing the multiverse and things that come from that. But I do agree with your point, Al. There was a certain part that I feel was focused on for too long.
Yeah.
And it could have been wrapped up and I think made a bit more simple. But I did really enjoy the movie. And I just like the fact that you didn't really know what was coming next. Second movie. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just saying fair enough.
Yeah, no. Second movie, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Forgot about that.
Don't spoil it. I'm going to go see it tomorrow.
Okay, I won't spoil it, but... Okay, I'm not going to say that part, but I will say I appreciated the tribute to Chadwick Boseman at the start.
Oh, okay.
So, especially with the... You know how at the start of the Marvel movies, they have the credits, and then
Yeah,
they show the
yeah.
clips of the different movies?
Sure.
That focused on Chadwick Boseman and his clips within the Marvel universe. So I thought that was quite
touch,
touching. Yeah. I'm not going to say that because I'm going to spoil it. I did like the diverse cast as well in the movie. Obviously, heavily centered around black actors, but then also with the introduction of the Namor character, his family. Then there's the cultural aspects from Mexican talent and Mexican culture. So I thought that was quite
that's cool.
interesting and really done well, I feel, in my opinion. Third movie, another horror, Barbarian. I was terrified.
Oh, yeah.
I was terrified.
I've heard good things about this, but I just don't know anything about it.
So I went in without knowing. I was like, you know what? I've heard good things. Let's see. Because horror movies, they can be done terribly.
Yeah.
This wasn't one of them. I thought it was done really well. It screams classic horror. It was set in, I guess, a seemingly abandoned town. And there was a eerily haunted house that was like the main, I guess, set. With something living in the basement. So I'll leave it at that. Two characters, I think they Airbnb the house at the same time. And the direction that it goes in, you kind of feel that one of them is to blame. Like one of them's a cause. If that's the case, who knows? You'll see when you watch it. But I thought it was very clever. I liked how the story developed. And for the most part, things were nicely explained. I think there was one hiccup for me. But I'll get your thoughts when you watch that.
From what I saw of like the trailer and that, it was like, I think I did talk about it on the podcast where I was like, this could either be like brilliant or it could be stupid, depending on, because obviously there has to be an explanation with the scenes and what they're implying, and it's very hard to do that because I mean a good example would be someone like M. Night Shyamalan, where he always kind of messes up a lot of really good ideas with something very stupid at the end. But you know.
Yeah, for me it was going down stupid. Ooh, Kirkman's are brilliant. Ooh, so yeah, check it out.
Fair enough.
Last movie I will mention is Nope.
Of course, yeah.
So obviously Jordan Peele's latest. Following his previous movies, I was definitely up for this. Again, went into it without knowing much. I remember when the poster came out. I think you told me, like Raccoon showed me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. The first initial poster that even he released where it was just like a cloud in the sky with like a tassel. I don't know what those things are called. The ribbon just coming out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you look at that and you're like, what the hell is this? Like, you know, not coming from him, you're like, like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all spoken about it, but what I did like was, I bet the cast was small.
Yeah.
It wasn't too small. There was still a lot of characters in it, but I feel it was done well because it allowed you to like really get invested with each character.
Yeah.
And their story. So that was a very big plus for me. Also, I really liked Keke Palmer's acting. She's always refreshing, fun, loud. So I loved that. And also the beginning of the movie, it seemed really random to me. I won't say which part, but
After the podcast, we can discuss it.
Yeah. I thought it was a mini movie. I thought it had no tie-in with Nope.
Yeah.
But they do explain it. It does come together. But I thought that was cool.
It's essentially, because one thing that's actually also quite unique with Jordan Peele, because he does this with something that people haven't realized, he's done this with all three films, is he has a seemingly non-connected scene to begin the film that actually
That's actually
explains the whole film.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't really realize that the actual beginning, not only does it kind of hint towards things at the end, it actually tells you what the film is going to be like in various ways. But like I said, we can talk about this afterwards.
So I don't have anything on worst featured or most disappointing, actually.
Okay, fair enough.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. So I guess we're moving on to our next section, which is going to be music for the most part, I believe. How did you have anything for music?
Yeah. I'm just gonna breeze through these. I'm not gonna take too long.
Fair enough.
So my I have no honorable mentions. Best and favorite songs. So first of all, I like to introduce it a bit. There's like a new genre of music that's come out that I've been really hooked on called funk, which is pretty damn good.
How do you spell that?
So PHONK.
Oh, cool.
Interesting.
Which is like, it's been kind of, I know TikTok is very cringy, but they've used that genre of music for a lot of videos.
Okay.
Which, again, it kind of, I think it kind of, usually when people use funky music, it's usually about like, they usually use it on like, sometimes they use it on anime edits, or they use it on like cars drifting, that it does actually go with the whole kind of, it kind of reminds me of Fast and Furious in a sense.
Alright.
Yeah. So I'm going to just go through the list of songs because there's no real story behind them. It's just mainly instrumentals. So I'm just going to list the songs. So it's Nateki featuring Play Main Midnight. There's 3 versions of this song. So there's the normal tempo, sped up tempo, and the slow tempo. I feel like my favorite version of it is the slow tempo, just because it just sounds so it sounds so badass when you listen to it. You just feel like an anime villain. It feels so cool. It's more so I feel like it's one of those. Yeah, it's a really good song. I think it's the second funk song that I found listened to. But funny enough, when I found out about the song, I actually, even though he's like the most controversial person right now, Andrew Tate. I was watching one of the videos on the short, and then I was like, didn't even care about the video, and I was like, what song is this? I looked in the comments and I found the song. I was like, what is this song? So that's how I found out about that song. So the next song is, I cannot actually pronounce this for the life of me. I'm just gonna spell it out. So it's CHYXZ featuring Slowy Main, and the song's called Ragnarok. Again, I think it's a shame that none of these songs actually have music videos, but again, it's a badass song. The next one is VISXGE, and the song is called Immaculate.
Are these Elon Musk's children?
I don't know. But again, that's a really cool song. This is the first ever funk song that I listened to, which is KSLV No Disaster, it's called. And then another one is by the same person, KSLV Override. And then the final song is Giga Chad theme funk version. All these songs are definitely worth a listen. It definitely gets you in a badass vibe. And it's funny because on one of the songs I was listening to, on the comments, someone said, I don't feel like drifting a car. I feel like drifting a tank. That's how hard these songs go. Man. They feel like drifting a tank. Most people say it's either workout music, drifting a tank, apparently, going to be drifting aeroplanes, I don't know next. But I think it's just worth a listen to this genre of music. But you will find it on most TikTok videos and YouTube shorts now. It's cool. And that's it. I've got no worse songs or no disappointing songs.
Fair enough. I've got a few things. I kind of scaled back my music selection mainly because I didn't really listen to too much, and I wasn't massively enthralled with a lot of music. I definitely listened to some stuff, but I just thought, you know what, let's just really just bring that down to the best that I really enjoyed, the stuff that I had on repeat, the stuff that I am gonna remember from 2022. So we'll start off with albums for the most part. And I've got honorable mentions. The first one is gonna go to Shy Girl with Nymph. This is her, I guess, debut studio release. She kind of released an EP a couple years ago, which I really enjoyed. And this is kind of her big album, which I really did enjoy for the most part. It definitely kind of still retains her very playful, very energetic style. She does kind of infuse a lot of her songs with lots of sexual innuendos and kind of very playful in some sense, on songs Nike, where she literally has the chorus saying, he told me Nike, just do it, stuff like that. And even on songs with the hilariously titled The Coochie Song, where she goes into detail about how there is, even in a very playful kind of fairy tale sense, she kind of says, oh, you telling me there's a coochie out there even for me? And stuff like that. I think the reason why it's on my honorable mentions is because there's kind of like a weird divide where she kind of has like slightly more poppy, more lyrical heavy songs, and then the second half is just like really more dance tracks, and it's kind of a bit weird that she kind of made that divide. But I really want people to look her up. She's really good. She's done a lot of collaborations and stuff like that. Number 2, I want to give to Gospel with The Loser. This band has been away for a couple years now, and they've come back after several years and just released maybe one of the most vicious heavy metal punk albums I've heard in a while, actually implementing actual elements of like gospel music in heavy metal, was like the lead singer is just screaming and just going at it, which it's a fun time if you want to hear something just really just out there, which I really enjoyed. My last honorable mention is going to be for Mall Grab with What I Breathe. This is kind of his more like studio release, where essentially he kind of dips into every single genre of, I guess, electronic and house music that he's kind of dabbled in, from techno to more house, instrumental stuff, and kind of just presents, I guess, some of his best work for the most part. I really like what he does with each track, and it definitely kind of has a vibe aspect for the most part, which I really, really did enjoy, so I wanted to give that a mention. Best and I guess favourite, I only got 6 to talk about. As you probably can notice, I do have a bit of a cold. But first one I want to talk about is going to be for FKA Twigs with Caprice Songs. This is an interesting album where FKA Twigs kind of focuses a little bit more on relationships in the past, and kind of aspects that are kind of left out in a lot of regards. Things like the relationship, or the, not necessarily the mental stability, but more kind of like from the male's perspective, and kind of how that's not really addressed, which I kind of really liked on a lot of the tracks, which I really did enjoy that kind of element. And there is a lot of tracks that are very club bangerish and that kind of stuff. The only downside with this album is the fact that The Weeknd is featured on this. Ooh. And I just don't like the song he's on. I don't think it's that great. His vocals are really just not great compared to a lot of the other features that do feature on this. It kind of does dampen the album. I don't think he's that strong of a singer. I don't even think he's that good of a person, but
people are gonna click off this. Definitely click off this podcast.
They can if they want to, but they know I'm right. Next one, number 5, is gonna be for Denzel Curry with Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. This is definitely him at maybe one of his more experimental points for the most part, as he kind of does reference a lot of the things he's been feeling and kind of how he's been going about things over the last couple of years. I do really like this album. A lot of the tracks on this one definitely do go in quite hard for the most part, even titled tracks. I'm completely forgetting some of the names. I don't have the track list with me, but yeah, it's a really fun and really interesting album that I really do enjoy. Number 4 is going to be for Freddie Gibbs, and that is going to be Soul Sold Separately, which is a nice bit of alliteration. This, I guess, is his next major studio album, and I do love the concept behind this one, where he's essentially in a hotel in Las Vegas, just kind of there. And I do like how it does kind of have him once again referencing his past, referencing the fact that he was arrested, other issues, the fact that he does make, not necessarily, I'm trying to remember the word. He kind of talks about the fact of where he kind of sees himself right now, kind of still being like a major multi-million-dollar like rapper, but yet he's still selling cocaine and other aspects like that, which I really did enjoy for the most part. Number 3 is going to go to Conway the Machine with God Don't Make Mistakes. Definitely one of the most personal and darkest albums released this year, especially coming from Conway himself. As a little bit of context, this album is recorded, or in reference to the fact that he was shot 3 times and still lived. And he does kind of talk a lot about that on this album, understandably, because that does change your life. And he does talk about these things in very introspective ways, even on one track where he kind of talks about how a lot of people most likely must be scared of him or kind of just want to stay away from him because when he needed them, they weren't there. And other aspects, like with him kind of addressing the fact that he's, no one seems to understand or care that he himself is stressed, and making comments about people saying, oh, you've got all this money, like you can't be stressing. He's like, but you don't understand, I'm losing sleep over this, making reference to the fact that he was shot in the face, the fact that he lost a child, and how he's literally saying, like, if you were holding your dead son in your hands and he looked like you, how are you not going to go mad? Stuff like that. And I do like the fact that he does reference a lot of these darker and more upsetting issues, and kind of does raise them in very interesting ways. And even the end of the album, the title track itself is very dark and very interesting, where he does just basically ask questions like, what would have happened if he did do this or didn't do that, and how his life would have changed. Would he even still be here if he'd gone out that night when he didn't and someone ended up dying? What would have happened? And I do like that, and it's kind of pretty interesting to hear a rapper be very personal about these kinds of things, to kind of address them and kind of present things in a very dark and informative way. And on another quick note as well, this is the first album released under the Shady Records label, so it's a pretty strong track coming from Eminem's label, so that's pretty good. Next album is number 2 is going to be Charlotte Adigiri and Bolis Pola with Topical Dancer. This is the collaboration between two artists. They've done a couple tracks before, but this is like the debut release, and this is a very playful, very interesting album where they kind of just play off each other and kind of make some very interesting electronic house tracks. Even the album itself starts off with Charlotte herself just answering calls, constantly just hearing her saying hello, and that kind of going into next track where she's asking questions like, I think on the chorus she's literally like, are you like political, are you correct? And kind of gives people ways to kind of be more politically correct or kind of say other things. Like, for example, don't say, as she does say on the album, don't say I can say that because I was brought up in a black neighborhood. Say, oh, he's just my neighbor. And other really fun kind of aspects like that. And it's another great track as well where, in a very high-pitched tone, she talks about the first time when she was unfortunately whistled at by guys, and kind of not understanding that at age 12, and kind of trying to realize what's going on there, and then kind of coming to the realization of why that is. Even Polis himself kind of talks about the first time he shaved, and other kinds of examples like that. It is a very fun album that does a lot of really creative and bizarre things. Even the last 2 tracks, I believe titled Ha Ha, just samples Charlotte herself just laughing, and the tone of her laughter kind of gets warped into the beats, and the only other thing we hear is just her just kind of saying, I guess you had to be there, which is really funny. And the last track, which is literally titled Thank You, kind of has her almost passively aggressively mimicking people giving her feedback and criticism, as she constantly relates people saying, oh, she goes, oh yeah, maybe, yeah, you're right, that dress doesn't look good on me, and oh, thank you for the support. And it is a really odd and interesting way to end the album, to kind of make fun of the people that I guess have ever tried to help you or kind of given you criticism. And throughout the whole track, it is the most, I guess, Daft Punk sounding track in instrumental wise, and throughout it, her voice is constantly kind of switching in audio as if like someone's changing the TV or the radio. It's a very interesting detail which I really like. It definitely kind of gives the album a very odd, or at least that track, a very interesting end. And my number 1 album is going to be Black Midi with Hellfire. Literally 1 year after their previous album, they are back with a really interesting album that takes a lot of inspiration from psychedelic and jazz and country, as well as elements from, I guess you could say, like classical and show tunes and musicals, to kind of make this really wild album that just is so playful that a lot of the songs on this album sound like they could be segments from a musical, which is really interesting. One of the main songs being Sugar Slash Tunzu, which has the lead singer talking about him witnessing a boxing match between these 2 boxers, referring to himself as a 3'3" weirdo to some extent, or aka a child. And his description as how he talks about things is very interesting, even on songs like Eat Men Eat, where I guess he's on a pirate ship with a pirate, and things kind of get drastic and crazy as like I guess the captain just turns demonic and starts like threatening them and just other weird stuff and that. It kind of goes all over the place. And even I love the last song of the album, 27 Questions, which kind of brings that whole play theatre aspects where it kind of is about a guy kind of retiring and people have kind of gathered to see him on stage as they talk about his life. And then he then comes on stage and then asks these questions about what happens when you die, what's going to become of me, is there even these bigger concepts, to then have people kind of just ridicule him and laugh him off stage and be like, he's a fucking idiot after all. It's a really just bizarre album that I would highly recommend because they just really went out and just did whatever for the most part. But yeah, if you're into like rock, heavy metal, punk, or you just want to hear something just bizarre, highly recommend that. Last thing I'm going to mention as well is going to be EPs. I want to mention one, and that is going to be coming from the legendary producer DJ Premier with Hip Hop 50 Volume 1. This is apparently one of 50 EPs he intends to release. And it starts off pretty strong. We have tracks from Joey Badass, who opens this track. Obviously, Nas is on this. Yeah. We get to hear, what is their name? Run the Jewels, LP and Killer Mike on one track, which I really love. And the EP itself even ends with a great track from, of all people, Slick Rick and Lil Wayne.
Oh, wow.
You know, essentially kind of talking about the struggles of money, which I kind of really liked. And it's interesting to kind of hear the dynamic of these two guys, with Slick Rick kind of coming in with his very soulful, very interesting introspective on, like, you know, as he literally says, you know, money thinks it's running things, you know, that kind of stuff. And to kind of have Lil Wayne just kind of almost bombard you with, like, how tough it is even for people like him, even to the point where he just lists, so he just goes like power bill, water bill, you know, all these bills, you know, it's like, you know, things that, you know, are affecting everyone. And I think it's a really strong EP, to say the least, and I'd highly recommend it. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for music. I don't really want to talk about anything else for the most part. But yeah, Reese, I think you have something for music?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it very brief.
Fair enough.
I feel like I'm so out of it with music, new music this year.
Okay.
So I've got Most Disappointing.
Oh.
One of the albums I did listen to this year, Scissors SOS.
That just came out, didn't it?
Just came out.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I'm going to go against the grain on this one because apparently it's doing really well.
Yeah, it is.
Not in my opinion.
It was shit.
I will be honest. I'll start off by saying I did say this for her first album, Control. Mm-hmm. I can't understand her. Honestly, it's an effort to try and... It sounds like mumbles. And I'm not trying to be mean because I said this about her first one and I went back to it, re-listen, and now I love that album. I think it's genius. So is that going to happen again with this one? Hopefully, who knows? But for me, it's effort. I love her to bits, but I don't know what she's saying. Yeah. We'll see if it's a grower. It's definitely not a shower. So that's all I'll say with that one.
Fair
Most
enough.
disappointing.
Okay.
I've actually kind of cheated with this next one.
Uh-oh.
Because I've created a new category. So it's not under honourable mentions. It's not under best favourite songs. It's not under worst songs. It's not under most disappointing. It's under guilty pleasure.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So one single from Harry Styles. I'm not even ashamed to say it. Late Night Talking. Bad Man Rhythm. Bad Man Rhythm. Late Night Talking. The video's all right as well, actually. I will say. I don't know what it is. It doesn't sound... Okay, to be fair, I haven't listened to much of Harry Styles. I'm not a fan of his.
You're not up to date on your One Direction?
I'm not up to date on my One Direction. No.
Man.
Which direction?
Which direction do you take?
But to me, it doesn't sound like his song. It sounds like it's good. Like I don't know what it is about
I see
it.
where you're going with that.
Like if he wrote it, well done. But I would like to find out who wrote that song. Yeah, who made it, who put it together, because I think is a really cool, catchy vibe.
Okay, fair enough.
But that's it for music.
That's it for music? Okay, well, let's move on to the next section, which I think is going to be television. Another one of the big ones we do talk about for the most part. And I believe we're going to start with you, Al.
So my most Disappointing anime and animated series is Tekken Bloodline Rebellion.
Oh boy.
Yes.
I did mention this on the previous podcast, but I'm going to go into details as to why I thought it was very disappointing. Well, first things first is some of the characters that were in it weren't even in Tekken 3. Like, you had Feng in it, who wasn't introduced until Tekken 5, and you had Leroy, who wasn't even in Tekken 3 until he was in Tekken 7. So I'm like, why have you got a Tekken 5 character and a Tekken 7 character in a story that's set before and during Tekken 3?
I didn't know that.
Like,
Someone didn't do their research.
yeah, I'm just like, what are you doing? And then like, I like the thing that I did like about the series. Don't get me wrong. Is like I loved the fact it touched on like Jun's relationship with Jin and how like she brought him up and everything and like trained him in some sense. And like you actually saw her fight with Ogre. But like the rest of the series, when it's like Jin doing the training with Heihachi and like doing the whole tournament thing, it felt so rushed.
Yeah.
It really did, and like even his fight with Hwarang, like it just felt rushed. And like some of the characters, like Paul, he looked derpy as fuck. He looked really derpy. I was like, what is going on here? Like, I just didn't. There's certain things I didn't like, and like Julia as well. Like they took her Tekken 7 look and put it on, like gave her Tekken 7 outfit in Tekken 3. Why didn't they just give her normal outfit that she was debuted in, like the whole native Indian look? Why didn't they just give her that? Then the whole Tekken 7 look. And then, like, yeah, there was just certain things that I didn't really, it was very lackluster for me. Like, Tekken's one of my favorite games of all times, but just the anime adaptation, like, they did have an anime film back in the 90s. I can't remember what year it came out in, but that film did a better depiction of Tekken than this did.
Probably because Netflix didn't exist then.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably, yeah.
I will agree with you, actually. I think lackluster is probably the best word to describe it. Because even when it came out to the tournaments, no one was in the audience. I was expecting like a huge crowd.
Oh my gosh,
no one.
And this was like Tekken 3 era, right?
Yeah,
Where
Tekken 3, yeah.
Iron Fist should have been a popular thing at that point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, so that was odd. I did like the animation style. I thought that was done well. But yeah, lackluster.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was sad to say. But
Honestly, I'm not really surprised.
Such a shame.
no.
Do you have anything else for TV?
No, that's it.
Okay, so it's on to me next. We should have probably clarified before we actually went into this section. We do have it. Television is broken up to two sections, both animated/anime and live action, because I think they are technically two different beasts that are worthy of their own sectioning. I'm starting with my animated section. I've only got two to talk about under my best and favorites. Number 2 is gonna go to Zootopia Plus. This series has been around since Disney Plus has existed, and it finally came out. And this was a really weird one because it was a collection of 6 very, very short stories that all take place during the 2016 film. So do not go into this film if you have not seen Zootopia, because it will spoil it for you, unfortunately. So I'm going to tread very carefully when I talk about this show.
Okay.
Or series, mini-shows, or whatever you want to call it. You get 3 shorts. I think they're all worth mentioning. The first one, I think it's called Hop on Board. It follows the main character, Judy Hopps' parents, as they say goodbye to her. She leaves for the city of Zootopia. But one of Judy's youngest siblings kind of gets on the train, so both her parents have to essentially track down the train and try and like save her. I think this one's really done really well, as like the parents have a really great chemistry, like very back and forth, and we kind of get to see more of the world of Zootopia before we actually get to the Zootopia city. I really like that one. The second one is, I think, the Desperate Housewives of Little Rodea. It's essentially a parody of the Housewives episodes, but all the characters are both shrews and mice characters in like this little Rodea world where it's all just rodents and that, which is quite funny. It's done really well, and they kind of do parody things really well. The episode is lit terribly, much like all those shows are lit terribly. The stock music does sound like bad stock music, and they do have some kind of funny moments. They do it really well. I think the thing I like the most about it is the fact that because they're so tiny, you do get these scenes where it kind of pulls out and you do see the very huge polar bear bodyguard's just kind of there as this drama's happening. There's even a point where two characters fight, and the polar bears just kind of look at each other and just like pull them by their tail to stop them from fighting. Just like, oh god, again, literally. And I think one of the funniest characters is, I can't remember her name, but she's like this mouse character that's kind of like friends with them. She's very much like Pinky from Pinky and the Brain, where she's just kind of there but not there, and they don't really talk to her to some extent, even during like when you have these episodes and they have like the glamour shot where it's like, oh, it's Cindy, and oh, this is Samantha, they kind of turn to the camera and smile. Her one literally has her just saying, I just got out of prison. Which is, and I'm just like, we need more on this character, because she's wearing a restraining like strap on her like leg, and I'm just like, yeah, more focus on this character, please. The next story, I'm trying to remember what that was. It's kind of escaping me. I know there's one which does kind of follow two characters where they kind of go for a like talent scout episode. It's like, I think it's like kind of called like So You Think You Can Prance, like a dancing competition, very much like Britain's Got Talent, for example. That one's fine. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's the most disappointing one. We do have an episode which is kind of a musical, but it's just one song, like just one 4-minute long song with one character appears. I'm obviously avoiding spoilers because I don't want to spoil this character for the most part. The last episode is probably the most unique one, where it follows a otter character who is a waitress at a restaurant, and she's desperately trying to get her table served so she can go to a concert, but she is unfortunately hit by two sloths who come in for a table reservation, and she kind of does as best as she can to try and deal with them, which I think is really funny. It's really well done. It has like some great concept. It does feel like a very classic, almost like Disney Looney Tunes-esque setup, something I could very easily see Bugs Bunny or like Mickey Mouse kind of being in that situation of just like, oh, come on. I think that one is probably the best one, and if you're going to watch any of them, watch it, but please watch Zootopia first, because this one does actually ruin the ending of Zootopia.
Oh, really?
So you have been warned. And I'm not talking like it spoils like concepts, I'm talking like it literally is the end of Zootopia. Okay. So stay away if you haven't seen it. Or just watch Zootopia, because that's still a really good film. Number one best animated film is, of course, going to go to Smiling Friends. This series was fantastic. The general premise kind of follows this company, the Smiling Friends, that kind of work to essentially make people smile. That's kind of their job. And it's such a bizarre and just out there and just weird show that's just wacky and crazy and just all over the place. It's probably one of the funniest things I think I've seen in a long time, because it just does not care for the most part. Essentially following the two characters, Pim and Charlie, this purple character and this yellow character. We don't know what exactly they are. It's just beings exist in this world, and I do love how it both is ridiculous but also kind of like painfully accurate in a lot of ways. Like the Halloween episode or special, which the season 1, and it already has like a Halloween and Christmas special in
why
there.
did you check those out?
Did you not see the last episode?
Are they as part of the original series?
Season 1, yeah.
Ooh,
the last episode is a Christmas special. Or a Christmas-themed episode, I guess you could say. I'm not going to say the title of it, because the title intentionally spoils the ending of the episode. So try and watch that episode without seeing the title. Even in the Halloween episode, I think Charlie does make a very, very good point where he does say that he's not going to dress up for Halloween because you never know what's going to be considered offensive in the future.
Very true.
Which is, yes, very true. And they do prove that point very well at the end of the episode. But the episode does kind of have a lot of really funny and great concepts. And one thing I realized after watching the series is that it's a show that's very much in celebration of early like animation on the internet. There's a lot of very interesting references and cameos from people who are both internet famous and just all kinds of spectrums. It's very out there in some sense. Like, for example, in the very first episode, the creator of the website Newgrounds is in there. You've also got internet personnel like Red Letter Media do make an appearance, and other people who have worked in the animation industry within YouTube just doing roles. Characters like 3D Squilliam as well, who obviously sticks out like a sore thumb and stuff like that. And even in the episode, you have the great concept where you have the frowning friends, who are the the opposing opposition who exists to make people frown and be upset, which is just so brilliant in its
I thought it was really cool because they set up their office right opposite
literally opposite
the Smiling Friends,
because their building, the Smiling Friends building, is literally just a yellow smiley face, so theirs is a purple frowning face, which is Brilliant. It's so bizarre, and even the episode as well does deal with great concepts, because the Frowning Friends do get to the point of like, literally as their motto is like, what's the point? Everything's bad and all that kind of stuff, even to the point where it does get very questionable and very extreme. It's a fantastic series. Even there was a special they released a little while ago where the Smiling Friends go to Brazil, and that is hilarious. It's like literally 10 minutes of them going to Brazil, and that's all I'm going to say. I do like it doesn't feel like it has a script. It just kind of feels like they just got to the studio and just talked, and then they just worked animation around what they came up with, but not to make it seem like it's a lazy show or anything like that. It really is a very strong show. I think you can watch the whole series in just about an hour, and I think it's just a perfect watch, because I'm actually just blown away as just how. I know someone made a very good point talking about, I think the main reason why the show succeeds is that it's just positive. It's just a happy show. So many shows right now want to be depressing and dark, and yet you've got a show literally about wacky characters trying to make people smile. Yeah. I mean, the second episode dealing with the character Mr. Frog, that's some of the funniest stuff I think I've seen ever. Like, just, oh my God, you need to, if anything, just watch the episode of Mr. Frog, because that is just, not even gold, that's platinum right there. That is platinum.
Up there.
Oh, it's up there. It's up there with one of just my favourite things ever. Moving on to live action series, I've only got 4. My first 2 are going to confuse people. Number 4 being Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not a film, as I found out. This is actually technically regarded as a TV special, despite only airing on Disney+. Despite the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise being a film franchise. No idea what's going on there, so it's technically a TV special. But this is essentially a really fun special which revolves around the Guardians of the Galaxy trying to cheer up Peter Quill, Star-Lord, because he's a bit upset about certain things that have happened in the Marvel Universe. So Mantis and Drax the Destroyer go to Earth to track down the legendary Kevin Bacon to cheer him up, because Kevin Bacon has been a inspiration to him and I guess the Guardians franchise. He's kind of regarded as like a legendary warrior who has done so many things, thanks to Peter telling aliens that he's done all these things. For example, saving the universe by dancing, stuff like that. It's a really fun concept because it just kind of boils down to 2 aliens going to Earth and just fucking around. It's really great, especially when they're on like the Hollywood Walk of Fame and they just see a guy dressed as Captain America and they just immediately run at him and they're like, oh my God, it's him. And the guy obviously runs away scared. Weirdly enough, no one questions what they look like. They don't wear disguises. I think it's established that people don't know about the Guardians of the Galaxy in this universe. So I guess they just assume they're eccentric people dressed up. It is really funny and it gets really abstract and bizarre because it does kind of paint the picture that just these 2 characters could probably just take over the world because they're that powerful. It does have some really funny and great moments. The dialogue is fantastic because Mantis and Drax have really great chemistry. They're basically children in this story. Just imagine if you gave children superpowers and said they could do anything. That's basically what they are in some sense, and it really works and it's really funny, and you get some really nice, I guess, setups towards Guardians 3 and other things where we do introduce Cosmo, the telepathic dog, as well as someone else gets teased, but I can't remember who. But yeah, really good. If you like Guardians of the Galaxy, highly recommend this. Number 3 is going to go to Werewolf by Night. Once again, this is not a film. This is a TV special. This is the most far-removed thing in Marvel to do with Marvel, and I think it's fantastic because of that. Simple premise. All these bounty hunters who hunt monsters, they come together because one of the greatest I guess monster hunters has passed away. Whoever is able to slay this beast gets his magical power. That's pretty much it. It's literally 50 minutes. It really does harken back to the very classic horror movie aspects. It kind of doesn't quite get that aesthetic correct. It's very obvious they are using a filter to kind of create that noise, olden time film effect. And obviously the audio is just way too clean, and obviously the makeup and some of the technicals just, they are of today. that's nitpicking, for example, but I do think it's a very strong and very fun film that kind of just follows this really interesting premise. And I think it is quite funny in terms. It does kind of do combat and violence and kind of gore quite tastefully well and stylized. Really do I love the cinematography as well. I think some of the lighting was particularly grand and strong in this one. I really do like the fact that they took a risk on this, because it literally has almost nothing to do with Marvel except for one character, technically, which was a very interesting what they did with that one character. But
this is it. I was surprised. I'm glad they took that risk, as you said, because it's kind of, they didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
So it's also exciting to see, okay, they've done this. I think it was quite successful. What else will they come out with?
Yeah, I hope that we do get more specials like this that kind of just are in the world but kind of take a break from that. It isn't like, you don't have to watch a single Marvel film to see this. Yeah. You don't have to have seen Endgame to understand who this is. You know what I mean? Or it's not setting up 8 other films. Yeah. Like, there's like no end credit scene at the end. It's just, here is a 50-minute cool concept. Enjoy. And I really wish that Marvel and Disney would do more stuff like that. They have close to unlimited money. They really should be doing more stuff like this, experimenting, because there's Marvel properties that don't fit into things, and it's best they do this instead of like shoehorning other characters and all that kind of stuff and setup. Number 2 is going to go to Kunk on Earth, which is a satirical documentary comedy series revolving Philomena Kunk, who is the presenter, as she essentially goes throughout the history of Earth, simply put. It's a very fun series, kind of coming from writer Charlie Brooker, who I think most people know as being one of the writers and creators of Black Mirror. And it's such a believable and strong series, as a lot of people I've realized don't actually realize that Philomena Kunk is actually a fictional character. They kind of think that she is a legit thing, and this is just like a terrible like interviewer or presenter just kind of just not getting it, for example. And a lot of the hilarity does come from those moments where she does interview these experts, like actual professionals on these topics, and she asks them bizarre and interesting questions sometimes. Like, I think when talking about the ancient Egypt, she asks what the hell the pyramids even are, and she does say, are they some kind of ancient anti-homeless thing? You know, to which the professional was like, no, I don't think that's the case. And
I don't think so.
Other examples where she like talks about how during the Olympics, when it first started, the contestants, they would perform naked, and she kind of goes like, well, why would they do that? You would see right up someone's bumhole. Like, could they have not censored that? And the professional's like, no, I think that would have been hard. It's like, but you could see everything. Like, that's a problem. And it is delivered in a very funny way. It is still informative, as it is kind of like a nice refresher, but I do like how it is like a nice swerve, a nice twist, because even someone who does know their stuff can probably get a laugh out of her getting things incorrect. But there are a lot of great visuals and a lot of great concepts, even, you know, just some of the analogies she makes, even in the first episode, where she literally says, you know, I'm in a cave, not because I want to, but because I've been asked to, you know, and even kind of talking about, kind of just making fun of things. And I think she performs it, and it's written so perfectly well. It's like 6 episodes long, highly recommend it. And my number 1 pick is, of course, going to go to Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared.
Ooh, yeah.
This show, honestly, in my opinion, like, did the impossible. To take an already just bizarre, strange concept, a puppet comedy horror show on the internet, and then translate that to a televised series, and then make it better than what it previously was, in my opinion, is something that just doesn't happen. It usually doesn't work. And for them to achieve that is absolutely commendable. Because the show is fantastic. For anyone who's never seen it, it essentially revolves around 3 puppet characters, Red Guy, Yellow Guy, and Duck Guy, who essentially kind of exist in this house, and they are kind of taught lessons, things about life from, I guess, teachers, as I said, some people refer to them, who kind of come in and, you know, literally teach them about certain things. And the episode kind of devolves around that, but things do take dark, disturbing, kind of hilarious examples or twists, which is a great concept. And this series does do that, but with a bigger budget, and kind of really expands on that with a 20-minute runtime. It is really hilarious. Yeah. to kind of see certain things play out and see certain things happen. I mean, I think even he's not on this episode, but when me and Ace were just laughing at the first episode being Jobs, and talking about just the absurdity of just how things do work out, but it does have very interesting aspects, like for example, episode that deals with death, where it kind of does ask certain questions like, is it okay to want someone to come back, and you know, that kind of stuff, which kind of does blend into the whole mimicky of educational programming and how it does get things wrong. Like there's even a bit where a yellow guy literally doesn't like the fact that Duck guy has just died, and he's like sad, and I think the lampshade literally kind of says, oh yeah, well I think what happens when you die is you essentially go to the center of the earth and you have to perform a performance in order to regain your spirit. He just goes on some conspiracy mad thing, and then it just, enough of that, just really bizarre things. And it is a fantastic episode. I won't spoil too much because we do kind of get development as to what may be going on, because it is bizarre. Things don't quite make sense. I mean, you have episodes that deal with family, which paints a very disturbing idea of what family means to a lot of people, with a hilariously bad song that just play in the episode. The songs in the series are great as well, I must say, because it is partly a musical as well. And even a whole episode dealing with it wasn't internet, was it? It was I can't remember what the episode that deals with a character known as Warren the Eagle, who is
I don't remember that one.
You know, this, I think it's like the 4th episode. Warren the Eagle, who's obviously a worm, but who, I think it kind of deals with friendship, and it's a very interesting episode that kind of, because Warren the Eagle is essentially the definition of when a friendship goes really bad, like that kind of person that just destroys everything they touch, which is really great. And even the last episode itself, which I think is probably the most famous one, maybe one of my favorite things in 2022 period, hands down. I think that episode is perfect given what it does, and because it is kind of a lie. It is about electricity, but not really. And I do love where they take the series, and hopefully it does get a second season. But I think it is fantastic, the whole series for the most part. That's pretty much going to be me into talking about television. Recess, I believe you have some stuff.
Okay, yeah, I will say, just following on from that, I think they had a really strong first episode start with the whole job situation, and like office politics, and people becoming managers and not wanting to be, and then kind of stuck there, and it
does paint a very realistic and grim depiction of like certain jobs like that. A lot of it is like that for the most part, in terms of, you know, how they go about parodying things and referencing things, and which I think is really strong.
Cool. So I'm going to start off with anime. So honorable mentions: Chainsaw Man. I guess this world does include devils. So what would a world with devils be without devil hunters? So main character Denji is a devil hunter, who takes on missions to kill devils or destroy them, in order to try and like clear his debt. He's got a lot of debt that he owes to this group of people, and this is kind of like the only way he can survive. Okay. So he does join a group or like an organization of other devil hunters as well. Some friends, some of those people are kind of out to get him. Not sure how their relationships will develop in the following seasons, but not everyone's kind of on his side to start with.
Okay.
What I really like, I do like the concept of the devils themselves, and I kind of feel that there can be a devil for anything. I'm not sure.
I think that's the implication in the series.
Yeah,
that there kind of is.
It could literally be anything. So it kind of revolves around, or how devils work. They feed off of people's fear.
Okay.
That kind of empowers them, gives them their strength. And at the start, it's either episode 1 or 2. There's a character called Makima, who kind of gives an explanation of this. So she uses an example of the coffee devil.
Okay.
So that devil wouldn't really be that powerful because, you know, the drink coffee isn't scary. It doesn't really instill a sense of fear. But then compare that to like a gun devil, that would be very strong because obviously if you've got a gun pointing to your face, you're going to be terrified.
Yeah.
You don't want to die. I will say that concept of devils, it's not new. Like we have seen that before in terms of like demons, gods, deities, like deriving their power from people's belief in them and the amount of belief that they have in them. But I do like how this show kind of gives a new perspective on it. I guess with that example of the coffee devil, it just makes me wonder. I'm really interested to see how they develop that and what other devils they will introduce. Without spoiling anything, there's a contract devil in the season. Various other devils, but really quite excited about that. Most disappointing anime of this year, Housing Complex C. Now, I feel that this had a very, very strong start, very strong first episode. Drenched in mystery, quite horrific elements as well. Without going into too much detail, there seems to be some sort of deity or like godlike figure who people pray to or maybe make sacrifices to.
Okay.
But for me, that was its peak, and then it kind of went downhill from there. It centers around like characters living in a housing complex, hence the name, or a block of flats, and they kind of get tangled up in this like evil entity. I'm not gonna lie, I did get a bit lost with it. I feel that it was just too slow.
Oh no.
And I don't know if it was just my attention span or what, but I feel like I probably missed some quite important things.
If anything.
Well, yeah, if anything. Because I came away from it thinking, okay, but that didn't make sense to me and that wasn't explained. It was just very slow. I mean, for example, like why the main character's mum was growing from a plant. I didn't really get that. Huh? I feel like I just missed something there.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
Excuse me.
Strange.
So yeah, that was disappointing. In terms of live action, so honourable mentions, we've got The Patient. Now with this one, the storyline is predictable, but overall, I really enjoyed it. And I think each episode were about 20 minutes. I think apart from the last one, which was like 40. But I think that actually worked to the show's favour. Mm-hmm. In a nutshell, like one of the central characters, they're addicted to murdering people. He sees a therapist and he makes this confession to his therapist, to which he then kidnaps the therapist and locks him up in his basement.
What show is this?
So this is The Patient, currently on Disney+.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For the family.
For the family,
Yeah,
you know.
Sure. Okay. Why not?
Jimmy, we're going to watch The Patient. New episode starts tonight.
I will say, probably not for the family. There were quite some shocking moments in it. And this is in addition to him being kidnapped and locked in the basement. But I feel that also there was a good kind of twist. Because you're introduced to the therapist, he's got quite a good profession. He is, up there with status. He's helping people. But then, like throughout the series, he spends a bit of time alone.
Yeah.
And then you kind of see his vulnerabilities and just certain parts of his life that he feels didn't go so well and where he would have changed things. So it was quite nice to see that vulnerability from his perspective and just him like reflecting on his life there. I'll leave it at that, but The Patient is worth a watch. Second on the list is House of the Dragon, House of Dragons. So this is the prequel to Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was just a bit of too much of a slow burn for me.
Oh, really?
And at times it felt a bit disjointed as well. So this, like the disjointed part, that was for me mainly due to the time jumps. I think there were maybe 4 or 5.
Oh, jeez.
And they weren't really done that well. At first I thought it was just me. So there's no like blatant 5 years later or like 10 years later.
Right.
They do it in a way where some, at least for the first time jump, some of the characters, the actors completely change. And then others say the same. So it's like, oh, who are you?
Yeah.
Where did you come from? And there are a few of them as the series goes on. You do kind of get used to it, but it did kind of disrupt the journey for me.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. So I do think it would have really benefited from just informing the audience of like when and how long, how much time has passed.
Just a quick question, actually. Would you say Game of Thrones was better?
I would say Game of Thrones is better.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's just because there were more Game of Thrones episodes out there, so
fair.
I was more invested in that story as opposed to this one.
Yeah.
But at least for comparing this season to the first season of Game of Thrones, yeah, Game of Thrones better, definitely. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Best live action series, I'm gonna say start with The Sandman. So definitely a favorite of mine for 2022. I mean, those who have read the comics or listened to the audiobooks or read the books know what to expect in terms of like storyline and what's coming next. But the gist of it, the personification of dreams, aptly called Dream. So he is imprisoned. I think there's some cult ritual thing. He's trapped. He does escape. After escaping, he's trying to reclaim his like kingdom or like world of dreams, and just get everything back in order. But I do really like the casting in this, and I think the costumes and the makeup was done really well. And the fact that it was like a TV adaptation from a comic or novel, it didn't really feel like it. It felt like it could have been a separate thing, which I think worked well. Second on the list, Rings of Power. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Everyone's favorite show.
Everyone's favorite. You know what? I feel that the story was good. It was just another slow burn for me. I think there were 2 episodes that were like really action packed. Those were my favorite. Literally the last 2. So you did kind of have to give it a chance and then give it another chance.
We could just skip to those episodes.
Or you could just skip. Yeah, this is it. But yeah, like that said, they did kind of build the story and explain the history. I think they went into a lot of the history. So I hope they do another season, I do feel that will be a bit more action packed compared to this one.
If they take on board, I guess, feedback. But then again, most of the feedback was mostly negative. So, and given, like, I guess, Amazon's approach to criticism, where they actively blocked people's negative reviews and stuff like that, which was never bodes well. But
how are you going to develop?
I mean, yeah, Amazon was just very vicious about it, which is a shame because they don't own the whole story. They only own parts of it, which is why a lot of the story will never get told. Because the Tolkien estate are very vicious and greedy people who are only interested in money. Mm-hmm. The only reason the show existed is because they were shouting and proclaiming, "We want Game of Thrones." Mm-hmm. That's the only reason it exists, is because, as we all know, Lord of the Rings is Game of Thrones. Obviously. Yeah, go on.
That's... I mean, I didn't know that, so I didn't know that they... I guess had access to only like a portion of it. But
Yeah,
that said, I was always going to read the books, so I'm definitely going to read them after watching, and then definitely get the bigger picture.
Yeah, because you're not getting it with this story,
Yeah.
with this series, unfortunately.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but that we could be here all day talking about copyrights and other agreements and all that kind of stuff, but that's kind of how it goes down. That's why a lot of people are quite upset and annoyed about this show, because they took a lot of like creative liberties in terms of like casting different race characters, and a lot of comments made by people working on the show essentially saying that The Rings of Power was way better than Tolkien's work, and other really bizarre, questionable stuff that rubbed people the wrong way. I mean, if you're working on $1 billion series and you're literally telling your audience, yeah, fuck you, what I'm making is better, you better watch it. People are going to be very negative and very critical of your show when I guess most people don't like it, and that's unfortunately what happened. It's, I think, actually regarded as one of the worst shows in terms of maybe financial review or that kind of stuff, but we'll see what happens.
I get that.
Yeah.
Last one under my favourites then, The Bastard Son and the Devil Himself. So this is on Netflix, and I actually wasn't expecting much from this show. I initially put it on as background noise whilst I was working. And then I think it came to like episode 3, and I thought, oh, hold on, I like that. I like that. So I thought, no, I'm going to go back. I'm going to actually get a bit invested in this. And I really enjoyed it. So this is another one that's based on books. I think there are 3, so I think it's a trilogy. But it's a fantasy show based on witches. So you've got your good witches, bad witches. And then obviously the main villain is the main character's dad. I mean, come on.
Standard.
Yeah.
But I really like how the show was done, and I guess you've got like different witches. So you've got like the alchemists, and I think the amount of detail that they go into with the alchemists, they create potions or have these like powders that can make someone do something or control someone. And the 2 main alchemists in the show, their fingers are like covered in the powder that they use.
Okay.
So I just thought, okay, that's quite a cool but small level of detail that I really enjoyed. Unfortunately, I think it was last week, 2 weeks ago, they announced the show was cancelled after the first season. To which my friend said, the main character is a person of colour who isn't heterosexual. Of course, they're going to cancel it. Ooh. And I was like, when you put it like that, okay, not surprising. But like a lot of the fan base are actually asking for it to be brought on another platform. So it's on Netflix, but a lot of them are wanting, maybe it can be on Amazon with the same actors. Who knows?
It could happen. It happened with Tuca and Bertie.
Okay, yeah.
So it's possible. It just depends on if Netflix wants to play nice. I guess they don't like to, because they're a terrible organisation that will acquire all these things, cancel them, and do literally nothing with them. It's kind of how the industry does work for the most part. But hopefully, we'll see. It's happened before. Maybe it'll happen with this. It just depends on rights and agreements and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Netflix will, as I think it will do in a few years, get liquefied and acquired. So that might happen. Netflix is on its way out, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh, interesting.
Is that you for television?
One more. So this is just under my most disappointing.
Fair enough.
Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
Okay. Yeah.
I was so hyped for this. And I still really do like the idea behind the show. So it's kind of horror, I guess, based.
Yeah.
8 episodes directed by Guillermo, but written by different people. Overall, hit and miss for me. Like most episodes were just very, using that word again, lackluster.
Okay.
I don't know why, because I feel that the plots themselves were sound. They were really good, in my opinion. It just didn't deliver. Something was missing.
Okay.
I feel the best thing about the show was actually how the episodes were released. So it was staggered across the Halloween period, and we got like 2 episodes each night. So it was exciting to look forward to the next 2 episodes, but it was disappointing.
Fair enough. Would you recommend for people watching it after that period to watch it like that, or just maybe binge watch it?
You know what? I wouldn't even say binge watch it. It's
because I know
it's really bad.
Episodes are long, aren't they?
They are. So from an hour, I think, the longest is over an hour. I would actually say read the plots.
And pick your favourite.
Read a summary and pick your favourite. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough, because I know the director of Mandy did one, which I'm actually quite excited about to see, because I've heard that's one of the best ones out of them.
I'll see which one. Oh, wait, okay, I might know which one.
You probably do. Probably the one you enjoyed, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, okay, so that's going to be television for the most part. We're going to move on to another topic we kind of do talk about, but something we're all invested in, and it's going to be video games for the most part. Al, I believe you're going to be starting us off.
Okay, so my best and favourite video game of the year is Shifu. This game, I gotta say, like when the trailer came out, I think probably, I can't can't remember, it was like last year or the year before, but it was like one of the Sony State Plays. They showcased this game. I was already invested from that time when they showed it. I was like, oh god, this game looks really good, because it's like it's basically a beat 'em up game, and essentially when you die, you age. Which I thought was a really original concept, and just something that had never been done before. And the story of the game is basically, it starts off with so you're, I think, oh gosh, what is it now? I forgot the actual name of the character. But you start off as a character and you run to like a dojo, and basically the character has a feud with like his master, basically, and he ends up killing his master and in front of his child, and then kills the kid as well.
Wow.
But then like I think the kid has like a oh gosh, I forgot what it's called. Let's just say talisman, but it's not talisman. But basically that brings them back to life in a sense, so it keeps them alive. But you in the game you have a choice basically whether to be a girl or a boy.
Okay.
And you basically have to seek revenge for your father, basically. But overall, it's basically the only game that I've got the chance to actually like enjoy, because gaming for me now is not enjoyable at all. I don't find myself invested in much games, so actually seeing a game that I was like, oh my god, for a long time, got me actually excited for. I was really happy to actually finally play. And also from all the years of games coming out, I didn't have a PS4, so I couldn't actually enjoy them and play them. But finally, I can actually play a game and enjoy it, and something that came out in the year, and I can talk about it. So I'm so happy about that. But yeah, Shifu, definitely worth playing or watching even.
Yeah, still on my list. Excuse me. I have a few. I didn't play too much, but I want to give a special shout out to a few games as well. Kind of on my honorable mentions. Didn't play them, but I did kind of see enough of them to kind of go, yeah, no, I would play that, and hopefully will play that in the very soon future. Number 3, gonna go to Neo White. This is a very interesting, I guess it's a first person, almost like speedrun centric game where you essentially are shooting things in order to progress yourself forward while using cards. It's a really odd game, and it kind of has a bit of a story where you're kind of, I think it's like a descendant of like heaven or something like that, and you kind of like doing these things, killing these devils, and every character is kind of like this almost like clothed character with like almost bone mask, and that it's a really interesting concept. It literally was designed for speedrunning, going as fast as you can. The fact that some levels can be beaten in literally seconds is a really great concept. It does have a little bit of a very intentional anime-ish kind of awkward cringy story to some extent. The soundtrack is done by Machine Girl as well, which is pretty interesting, so you know it hits hard. Next game I want to talk about, obviously the biggest, probably the most successful game in recent years, is going to be Elden Ring. I did watch a lot of gameplay of this. I was very invested, and I'm very impressed with what they did with this game. I actually really enjoyed it. I haven't really played a Souls-like game, but I really like the way this one plays. I love a lot of the design elements, obviously coming from George R.R. Martin, who did Game of Thrones, who did a lot of the, I guess, lore, design, and kind of concepts. And I think it is just generally a really strong game. I know a lot of people got very upset with this game because they proclaimed it was too hard. It needed a difficulty setting. Those people are babies or children at the end of the day, because Elden Ring is actually a very easy game. It's also a very hard game. It just depends on how you want to play that game.
There's no difficulty setting.
There's no difficulty setting.
That's cool.
But here's the thing. If you want to beat the game in 5 hours, you can. If you want to spend 70 hours playing the game, you can. The game gives you that option. There's a literal weapon in this game that will just destroy the final boss in like a couple seconds. You got to put in the work to do that, but if that's the experience you want, you can have that. If you want a tougher experience, you'll go with sword or whatever. It's a very versatile game where you're kind of going to get the game you want or the experience you want from it, and I really do like that, because not that many games do kind of provide you with said thing. It's usually just you are playing the game, or in some cases you are looking at the game and maybe we'll let you play it sometimes, which is where gaming's going. But this is game. Like, literally the game starts, you get your ass handed to you, and then they just present you with the world, and they're like, yeah, you go. No waypoint, you go.
Good luck.
Good luck. Do what you want. You can go there if you want to. You go here if you want to. You know, it is a good example of just the motto that the simplest ideas is often the best ideas, which is what I really like. My final honorable mention is going to be for Shadows of Rose, which is part of the Resident Evil Village Winter Expansion DLC. This is a kind of ending to that game. So if you haven't played that game, don't look this up because it kind of does spoil it for the most part. But you're essentially playing as Rose, who is a character that is very relevant in the actual game, and she kind of revisits some of the nightmares that were Resident Evil Village. And it is an interesting little thing. It takes about 3 hours to beat, but I really enjoyed it. It definitely kind of felt like the best of Resident Evil Village in some sense, and I really did enjoy it. It's a fun kind of little thing. It's just like an extra bit of just if you wanted more kind of thing. I got 2 for my best favorites. Number 2 is going to be for Cult of the Lamb.
Hey.
This was a really great and fun game that not only had a very strong visual aesthetic, kind of like cute animals and like dark, demonic, cult-ish kind of concepts that worked really well, but it also was a really interesting and unique game in that it's both a roguelike dungeon crawler as well as being a farm simulator where you can you have a whole cult to control as you kind of indoctrinate people, kind of do whatever you want with them, but also pretty decent dungeon crawling for the most part. I love the hell out of this game. I thought it was a fantastic thing. It's a very addictive game, I will say that much as well. But I gotta also say as well, this was originally going to be my number 1 pick, but I have to clarify this. I did not have the best of time with this game. Lots of glitches and technical issues really hurt my experience with this game. I played this game twice, not because I wanted to, but because when I beat one of the bosses, I beat that boss and then died. The game said I died, but then said I'd progressed with the story, but then still said I still needed to beat that boss, but also let me beat the next one.
Confusion.
Very confusing. I didn't know what to do at this point, so I just continued with the game thinking that, I'm just not going to get that item. I beat the next I beat the next boss, and I get no trophy for doing so. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll go back and beat that previous boss. Nothing happens. Essentially, my game kind of gets locked in this weird situation where it's not really registering my progress in some sense. So I play the whole game again. Jeez. It took me 24 hours. I beat that boss. I got the trophy for that. Had to go back and get all the collectibles. Trophies were still glitching for me, as well as other glitches that kind of just locked me out of progress where enemies literally just wouldn't die. I eventually did get to the end of the game, beat the final boss. At this point, I had almost 100% of the game, where every single collectible, every single trophy, it was just beating the game. That was the only thing I needed to do to get that final trophy to platinum it. Beat the final boss, did not get the platinum trophy.
What?
It did not pop. You cannot beat the final boss again.
Whoa.
So if I want that confirmation that I've beat the game, I have to play the game again in hopes that I would get that. And here's the thing, I'm not like a trophy hunter in that sense, but it's more just the fact that something that should have worked did not work, and I find that very frustrating, and that's the reason why I had to bump it down to number 2. Because
understandable.
I do still recommend the game. I think, to be fair to the studio, I think Massive Monster, they have constantly been updating it and fixing it, so I will give them that. Hopefully it's fixed by the time I do touch it again, but I had to make that clarification that was kind of the situation with the game in my experience. So for that reason, my number 1 game is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Fantastic, classic, old school beat 'em up that does a lot of new things, a lot of old things. It's technically a spiritual sequel to Turtles in Time, which is regarded as one of the best beat 'em ups of all time. And yeah, they just did a fantastic job with this game. Beautifully animated. The combat is perfect, on point. There was only 2 glitches where, weirdly enough, once again, there was one challenge in the game where you have to beat the game as every single character. I beat it as the final character. The trophy did not appear.
What?
Oh yeah, I remember the story.
So I had to then, luckily, you can, as every single character, you can just go back and fight the final boss. I did it with 3 characters, and somehow I didn't beat the game with Michelangelo, despite me having it recorded that I beat it with Michelangelo. No idea what the hell happened there. I don't know if this is just bad luck or if it's something to do with PS4, because I was playing these games on PS4. They should work regardless.
Yeah.
But It's a fantastic game. I do love a lot of the care and detail that went into this game. Also, kind of using voice samples and actually getting the original voice actors from the original animated series to do quick snippets and lines. Lots of them do reprise their roles, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It's quite a tricky game. The final boss is some BS to some extent, but I do really like it. If you wanted just a fun, quick beat 'em up, I'd highly recommend that game. And yeah, that's going to bring us to one of our last kind of media-based sections, which is going to be web space, which essentially regards anyone and anything kind of creating online internet content, so YouTubers, podcasts, that kind of sense for the most part. Al, I don't think you have anything for this section, so I guess it's back to me, unfortunately. I'm just going to kind of run down a couple of creators I really enjoyed this year and kind of hopefully give you some highlights and kind of recommend some of the things they did. They're not really in a particular order, so I guess the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be for the YouTuber The Rad Brad. Regarded as one of the most famous Let's Players out there, he just kind of approaches every kind of game with, I don't know, he's just cool, calm, and collected. He's just such a likable personality, and it's always just fun to kind of jump into any kind of game and just kind of listen to him play. He's, in a weird sense, he's kind of just like the everyman. Like, he just feels like a guy playing. He's never like a character in some sense. Yeah. It's just like, here's Brad and he's playing this game that you kind of want to see gameplay of, you know what I mean? And I do appreciate just kind of how he's kind of kept that going for the most part. So massive props to him. Next one is going to go to a YouTuber or a series, a YouTuber who I've been subscribed to for a while, but never really properly watched too many of their videos, unfortunately, but I've been really enjoying their content recently, and that is going to be for Wooly Versus. Essentially, him and his other friend Reggie, essentially they do play games kind of on stream, but the playthroughs themselves are uploaded to YouTube, and I do like their style. You do have face cam with both of them kind of reacting to the games, but I do have like some of their playthroughs. Their first time playthrough of Dead Space, which was fantastic because they've never seen that game, and it is really funny just to kind of see them kind of come at it with fresh eyes and kind of create their own lore and kind of come up with hilarious concepts, like for example them talking about one upgrade you get in the game called nodes, which kind of lets you upgrade your weapons, and then literally, and their fascination with them also referring to them as node boys, you know, kind of adding their own concept to it. And their playthroughs of the Silent Hill games, once again blind, were quite interesting because they don't know anything about them, but it is quite funny to see them kind of bring in perspective. Like, there's one hilarious scene when they're playing Silent Hill 1 where they're being chased by those weird monkey characters.
Oh, yeah.
And like literally, like Wooly is kind of struggling to kind of like, you know, get away from them. He literally approaches the lock with the padlock, and they're just like, whoa, wait a minute, time out. You know, no, you can't touch him. He's doing the puzzle. They just they do. There are some like hilarious moments. Even one point towards the end where Wooly is kind of like desperately low on health at this point in the final area. I think you know why that's quite a severe situation. And he sees like a silhouette of like a ghost walk by, and he shoots at it. To which Reggie is like, Wooly is like a ghost, and he's just like, you see this health? We're not playing around. They do have a lot of fun, and they do have a lot of like great titles, even to the point where like a lot of the episodes have really great references and titles, even to I think one of the parts is literally titled Out Footsie a God, where they talk about how they literally, how Wooly gets so invested in his fighting background that he's literally just running laps around everyone and like using combos and like bringing all this fighting game terminology into Silent Hill, which it's some really fun stuff. I really do enjoy it. Next content creator I want to talk about is Abroad in Japan, who is a really great content creator who's kind of been shifting more of his content to be more about him, not in a vain way, but kind of, he got to the point where he kind of realized that he physically doesn't feel like he's like that fit, like he wanted to lose weight, and he's kind of been striving to do that, and he has done that quite successfully, kind of taking on I don't know what it's called, it's like this challenge where it's like you got to prove your fitness in Japan, and he kind of does that, which is quite interesting. And he's kind of taking up boxing quite interestingly, he was in this content creator event where he did go in the ring against another YouTuber in a boxing match and won, which was quite nice. Good for him. He's definitely slimmed down and looks a lot healthier, and he's definitely kind of progressing in that way. So massive props to him, and obviously his series as he does with I completely forget its name, But he does like a mini series where he kind of travels around Japan, and the name is
The Anime Man?
no, he is with Joey the Anime Man, but it's the series. I completely forget its name because he did 2 of those, which was quite fun to watch. The name's escaping me. Obviously, got to give a shout out to my boy Cadicarus, representing England as one of the best YouTube content creators. Looking back on his YouTube channel, he's actually only uploaded 4 videos this year.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Not that I'm like trying to be negative towards him or anything, because all 4 videos have been fantastic, from him looking at the bootleg world of Crash Bandicoot games.
Oh yeah.
all the way to like the crazy amount of like controller peripherals and that kind of stuff, and a very scary but very informative video where he goes into his process of actually making videos, which is a really good video. You get to see a professional kind of how he makes his content, but it also does put, I think, most people off making videos, because it does go into how tough it can be for the most part. Next one, obviously, I want to talk about, I still think he's one of the best YouTubers, best film, I guess, and video game reviewers, and that's going to be Video Game Donkey, of course. Still, just kind of coming through with his very hilarious like style of reviewing things and all that. I know he's also going to be focusing on a game company as well, so that should be very interesting to see in the future. But I do love the hilarity he does, and he kind of provides some great insight in terms of reviewing games. He made a very hilarious video on Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which people really hated because he basically made fun of that game, but I thought the video was absolutely hilarious. And he was currently doing a series where he was talking about the history of Donkey Kong, and he was very informative and very comedic at the same time, as he was very positive about the original Donkey Kong game, but then kind of talking about Donkey Kong 64 goes into the nightmarish hell that game is, because there's just too much content in it. Number 3, I want to give a shout out to Channel 5 with Andrew Callahan. He's another very interesting YouTuber, and he's kind of like the next wave of actual informative information and news. He essentially goes around interviewing people on very interesting topics and subjects. And these can be very extreme and very political things, from protesters. Like, I know he covered the People's Convoy, I think it was, where idiots were protesting about that, even to covering things like the war in Ukraine, and even going to even more bizarre things, like his most recent video kind of deals with Hemingway Day, where in Los Angeles, a bunch of guys dress up as Ernest Hemingway for a competition in order to respect the guy. It's a really bizarre situation. He has a lot of videos like that, where he kind of just covers these weird niche things in American culture and kind of shows both sides of things, which is quite interesting. As he's put it in interviews, his style of editing is very low budget. Like, it's very terrible zoom-ins to people. It's very intentional, like he said this, but she said this kind of thing. The most fascinating video I think he did was on the Satanist convention, where you get this really interesting moment where you see all these people going to the Satanist convention, and you obviously get the Christian protesters who are there to obviously protest them. Ironically, the Christians don't know anything about Satanists. It is the literal reverse and parody of Christianity and kind of making fun of it. A lot of Satanists are actually pretty nice people. They're actually helping the world. It's just they have that idea of, like, because they say they worship the devil, when realistically it's just, no, we're here to oppose the stranglehold that Christianity kind of has on the world for the most part. Trust me, a lot of good has been done by people who refer to themselves as Satanists. You'll be very surprised. And there is a very fascinating moment where this girl who is going to the Satanist church kind of calls this one guy out who's protesting it, and she kind of makes a lot of comments saying that, like, you know, when she was in a really bad place, kind of coming from a place of abuse and other kinds of stuff, that the Satanists were there for her. Like, how can you protest these? And this guy who's Christian, he doesn't really know how to handle it. He kind of does panic. I mean, there is one point where she says, like, oh, you do realize there are girls who are, like, being abused, and you Christians are not doing anything about it. To which the guy bizarrely goes, oh yeah, well, there's girls in Africa marrying older men. And that's like his argument to silence her. And she's just like, wait, so you're saying it's fine for underage girls to get married? And he's like, no, I'm not saying it's fine. I'm just saying that's something that happens in the world. It's a fascinating moment. A lot of his videos do have very fascinating moments and very interesting moments like that. Very raw. Like, he doesn't bullshit it. Even with a two-parter episode or series or whatever, where he talks about the origin of, is it drill rap music? I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah,
drill music, where he kind of first goes to a convention where a lot of these obviously whiter kids are kind of like getting into the music, but then goes back to the origins of it being O Block, a town where this music did originate, and kind of how it blew up. And it's fascinating to learn where this music that the media is proclaiming is like the thing that's going to kill everyone. It's really fascinating and really valuable. But there's like lots of hilarity, like when he goes to the World's Strongest Man convention and stuff like that, and even previous videos where he goes to SneakerCon and other conventions, or Wedding Con at the same time, which is another great double bill to the fact that I think it's a SneakerCon and a Wedding Con are happening at the same time, and they meet up with one guy and he's just like, man, SneakerCon is dead, let's go to Wedding Con. Which is really good stuff. Number 2 I'm going to give, or my next one is going to be from Vash12349, one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. He's still experimenting with his Let's Plays. He's kind of gone back, played Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 8. He's currently playing the Callisto Protocol, which I've showed you guys some clips. That is a hilarious playthrough for the most part, but I really do like his style, and I do like the fact that he's kind of taking a more long format kind of approach. Like, when he records a set, he uploads the whole video. So when he uploads, it's like you're getting an hour and a half video, which I really appreciate. Even him playing the Mortician's Assistant, which was a very funny and kind of jump scare horror game where it's constantly trying to scare you with different varied things, and him just having absolutely none of that to some extent. Like, there's literally a picture of Jesus in the wall, like a very odd picture of Jesus who looks kind of worried, and he kind of comments on that going, it's like, well, if Jesus is worried, I'm in trouble. And stuff like that.
No hope for me.
No hope, even to the point where like he's literally seeing like a demon like kind of just in the distance, and he's just like, oh shit, but then just immediately turns, he's like, come on, and he just literally runs at them. just says like fuck it for the most part. And I guess my last one I want to talk about is going to be for Red Letter Media, some of the best reviewers out there. Just absolutely love their content and all the things they've done in terms of like reviewing things and kind of getting guests. Obviously their Best of the Worst series has been fantastic, and I even love the video they just recently put out where they talk to I completely forget his name. I know his first name is Freddy, but he has written for DC Comics, and they kind of talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film from the 90s and kind of talk about everything that makes that film bizarrely great in a lot of sense. Even kind of going back to talk about films like The Garbage Pail Kids and other things. It's, if you're into film, definitely highly recommend those guys. So those are just a couple of YouTubers and content creators I wanted to recommend. Recess, I think you had some things,
not for content, no.
Not from content. So I guess we're going to move on to highlights and lows of 2022. Basically things that were good, bad, that don't necessarily fall under media. They could be like news stories, world events, even stuff that like personally happened in our lives that we kind of want to talk about in detail for the most part. So Al, I think you have want to kick us off with this section?
Yeah, sure. So my highlights from 2022 definitely will be getting out of a job that I really, really hated, because I started off in a job in recruitment, and yeah, boy, that job was just awful.
Not the one.
Yeah, it was not the one.
Fair enough.
It was not the one at all. So I'm happy that I escaped that. And also my second one would be being able to get back into video games as well, because again, I've kind of been on like a hiatus, just not really motivated to play again. So I was like, luckily, I've been getting back into playing video games. And definitely the biggest highlight for me as well would be more so news. The fact that Tekken 8 is, had its reveal trailer, and actually finally there was another trailer talking about the story of the game, which finally Jun Kazama is back. So I'm really excited to see like what they're gonna do with her. I'm hoping, like, a lot of people have theories that like she might return back as like how do I say it, like if like Jin might be seeing her in like a dreamlike state. I really hope they don't do that with her character. I really hope she is just like, because she wasn't confirmed as dead, she was confirmed as missing.
She's never confirmed as
dead. Yeah. She's confirmed as missing. So I really hope that they don't change it up and ruin the story. The story's already gone downhill to most Tekken fans anyway. So I really hope they don't ruin the story, because the other Tekken games had a really good story plot, and then it just went downhill from Tekken 5. But anyway, I'm not gonna go into that's a discussion for another day.
Another discussion. Yeah.
Just outros about Tekken. But that's it. Yeah, that's it for me actually.
Fair enough. There is I have to stop myself in terms of some things, but I'm gonna start with the lows, the worst things. There were so many bad things. I just almost I couldn't write them all down because the whole podcast would just be this. So I think I'm gonna very quickly breeze past some of these. So I'm sorry if some of these things kind of come across as like just very left field or just like almost if I don't care. I do care about some of these things, but I just really don't want to bring down the level of the podcast too much to some extent. First thing I want to mention, this is lows, is obviously the unfortunate current situation with the war in Ukraine. I still think this in our generation is one of the biggest fuck ups I think we will ever see in our lifetime. For a country, or more accurately, a leader to go to war with another country in 2022, possibly one of the stupidest fucking things I think I've ever seen. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, the stupidity is... I can't even figure out the words to describe what is going on. And I'm going to miss out certain names because certain people are just not worth my breath. They're not worth that. But I do think it is honestly very interesting that the Russian government, they're obviously scared. They're terrified. They are being forgotten about. The world is changing, and like I said, they are terrified about that. And there are powers in this world that are more powerful than them, and they know that, and they are shitting themselves right now. And that's kind of the reason why this whole situation started. Their stupid little plan was, hey, if we attack Ukraine, NATO will obviously come in and we'll be able to teach Ukraine a lesson. See, we told you they were evil. They killed all these people. They killed all these Russians. But realistically, what happened was the rest of the world saw a terrorist country attacking another country. NATO did nothing, very smartly. And everyone looked at this, the whole world, and they went, wow, we don't like this. We're going to fucking stop you. And that's what's currently been happening for the most part. Russia, I do kind of feel sorry for the country and the people of Russia, because as much as it is very unfortunate what's happened in Ukraine and to certain countries that have been affected by the ricochet of this, it's the people of Russia I do also feel sorry for as well, because I don't want anyone to think that it is every single person in Russia who believes in this. They did not vote for this. Ask any Russian who unfortunately lives in this country now. They're here for a reason. They don't agree with this. It is the decision of one man, maybe 3 other people, that decided they wanted to do this. And it is quite sad, the fact that they've lost so much as a result of one stupid idiot for the most part. And, he's not going to be missed when he's dead. He is dying. It's most documented. He has Parkinson's, he has cancer. I'm sure the stress of failure is killing him because he has not succeeded and he can't win at this point. He loses every single day, ironically, and sadly that country gets weaker by the day. Yeah, sure, they're still getting money from fuel, but as I've just recently found out, Europe and other countries, they are going to be putting a sort of embargo on fuel. So yeah, there is going to be a fuel strike and prices are going to go up at the expense of Russia being forced to sell it at a discounted price, losing the millions, and that is going to be happening right now. Not to mention the fact that pretty much everyone else has kind of pulled out all support. A lot of the films we mentioned on this podcast did not get released in Russia. They did not get entertainment. McDonald's does not operate in Russia. Most media is not released in Russia. No one wants to do business with Russia, and I do not blame tons of people who have left. It's estimated over 50,000 people have unfortunately died as a result of this war from Russia. A good majority of people have left Russia, mostly the young people. All that's really there is their government and old people and extremists. The country is fucked at this point. I almost no longer feel sorry for Ukraine. I feel sorry for the people of Russia because they now have this stigma whenever someone's going to say they're from Russia, they're going to go, oh no, it's that terrorist country. It's such a disaster and it's all one person's fault, and it really makes me angry that this person kind of seems to just assume that we still live in the world 1960. It's honestly ridiculous because I mean this war is going to be over very soon and the outcome isn't going to be great for that government for the most part, and it just is quite shocking. It honestly is just shocking. I actually cannot believe this has happened. For the most part, I'm laughing because I can't believe it that much, and yeah, I mean, for a country that claims to be as powerful as it is, to get its ass handed to it, technically by one country, is just pathetic. At the end of the day, I mean, there's worse people who have achieved more in less time, like a complete failure. But like I said, but at the end of the day, death is coming. And I think lots of people are aware of that. And certain people's deaths will be celebrated greatly. Continuing awful governments, the Chinese government, they can fuck off. They continue to be like the worst thing ever. It's both Russia and America and Russia who are just like competing to be the worst country ever. I don't know what that's about. They need to just stop or just like kill each other off. And at the end of the day, I want to give a shout out to Disney as well for continuing to still be the shittest company, or one of the shittest companies ever. Obviously, a little while ago, the state of California did declare a bill. I think that people refer to it as the No Gay Bill, which essentially means that if you, a child with parents, grow up to be gay or transgendered, your parents are liable to be imprisoned because they didn't raise you right.
Wow.
Disney fully supported this bill.
Whoa.
Which gave them a lot of flack, especially during Pride Month. Disney actively supported this, as well as essentially posting the now very hilarious post where they said, "Oh, everyone is welcome at Disney. We accept everyone." Absolutely ridiculous. And I think even funnier when you have a film like Strange World, which I was telling you guys about, which features an openly LGBTQ plus character. This film was flopped. They're not promoting this because they just have this weird mentality of they want to say that they are all for this, but they're clearly not. I'm kind of glad the film was flopped. It's had a budget of, I believe, 139 to 180 million. It, at the time of recording, has only made, I think, about 65 million in cinemas for a Disney animated film. It's projected to lose millions, so I'm kind of glad and happy about that to some extent. Trying to think. Yeah, I think I might just leave it there. I think that's enough evil. I think I've thought of one other person. I'll do with like the idiot who currently now owns Twitter. That whole shitstorm is just hilarious right now because the only reason they bought Twitter is because they're scared that Mark Zuckerberg is going to make more money than them, and because they have the most fragile ego in possibly the universe. The best thing about this person actually acquiring Twitter is that now when you post a mean comment about them, they most likely are reading it, and they're most likely actively getting upset about it because they care that much what people think about them. The website won't exist in a couple years' time, thanks to them, because it's going to have to go to paid subscription. He bought this company when it was dying anyway. Twitter is a very outdated advertising tool. That's what it is. It's not a social gathering or whatever. He has to monetize it in order for it to have longevity. And when they do slap that price tag on, yeah, people won't be using it anymore. Netflix, also pretty terrible. Their whole situation with them pretty much eradicating their animation department, which was fucking stupid. I've talked about this on the podcast, as well as Warner Brothers also kind of getting rid of and just kind of destroying and kind of just making it really hard for people to acquire the animated series as they abandoned and kind of got rid of. It's worth noting that Warner Brothers is, I think, about $50 billion in debt.
Ooh.
After kind of merging with the Discovery Channel.
Oh, wow.
They've just made some of the most bizarre decisions this year. And obviously, I know you mentioned Black Adam. That film just got released and that's already lost them more money. They've tried to restructure the whole DC cinematic universe, which we'll see how that goes. But I do find it very frustrating that they went about viciously stopping people and hiding these animated series that were regarded as HBO Max exclusives. Lots of people lost their jobs, got fired. Some of these shows you can't actually watch right now because they were just adamant about getting rid of it. It was a massive mess, and I find it so ironic that they burned so many bridges and just really destroyed and damaged their reputation this badly, yet they're still fine to have oh, I forget the guy's name. The guy who has done so many alleged awful things still play the Flash in their DC film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's fine, but you, the guy who made the animated show, fuck off. It's like, come on now. It's just really frustrating. And I guess the last thing I want to quickly mention, because it's kind of still ongoing, is this whole situation with AI art, which has kind of become a bit of an issue right now, where essentially websites like DeviantArt, Pinterest, and ArtStation have essentially implemented this AI system which allows you to create, quote marks, art. Basically what it does is it scours the internet, steals art from other people, and kind of morphs and forms this artwork based on what you say. This is causing mass issues because actual artists do not regard this as art. People's artwork are actively being stolen, and these websites are more than happy to let people have their artwork be stolen. It's a situation that's currently being developed with, I think, copyright laws being brought in. There's speculations that people like Disney and other higher-end organizations are actively trying to back this in order to have more control over copyright and other people's artwork. I'm not going to get into it because it is still developing. It's still quite worrying, but I think I would mention that as soon as it's something that's still actively happening. Let's be positive now to some extent. It's very negative, I know, but my positives are actually kind of weird because I don't have too much to say. I kind of just want to give a shout out to every single person who's been a good person this year. Yeah. There's a lot of really bad things and bad stuff, and I do like the fact that a lot of people have kind of rallied and kind of helped each other and kind of support each other in very tough times, especially in England. The economic and political situation is very touchy right now. For those of you outside of England, we had a prime minister that almost destroyed the country, which wasn't great. I do appreciate people doing great things. Like, obviously, food and poverty is an issue. I do appreciate all the people that have taken time out of their businesses to provide the services that the government should be providing for other people. And I guess also everyone else who is kind of, this is a bit self-indulgent, everyone who's kind of enjoyed the podcast as well. I do really appreciate you guys for listening to it. I do appreciate that. Also, you guys as well, Recess, Owl, Ace, Ferret, and some other friends I've had. I'll be honest, some of the moments I've spent with you guys have been some of the best moments this year. It's honestly been a pleasure, just especially because they are unfortunately so rare.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, because of our jobs and the world. Mm-hmm. So it's really nice when we, even if it's last time I met Recess was literally just bumping into him down the road.
Yeah.
I think we spoke for 5 minutes, and we haven't seen each other for a good couple months until right now. Mm-hmm. Moments like that I've really enjoyed because this year has been quite tricky for the most part. Another positive was the fact that I finally kind of got everything reorganized and up to date and back to scratch for the most part. Last year I moved house. Everything's now organized for the most part. I created new documents. One document I'm really happy with is the master collection document, which details and lists every single thing I own media-wise. So that's books, films, TV, all that kind of stuff is all in a document, all dated, all in order. I know what I own. It gets added. I'm really happy with this document. It kind of gives me a mass peace of mind because before I just, because of where I was living and running out of space, I didn't know what I owned, and I did unfortunately buy doubles of things, which wasn't great because I'm a collector in that. But that's kind of some of the highlights. Oh, I wanted to give a quick shout out as well to two companies as well, being Special Reserve Games for their distribution of physical games like Cult of the Lamb, Inscription, and other older games like Broforce they're releasing, Shadow Warrior 3, just kind of being a little bit more obscure and kind of putting those games that people actually want. Demon Throttle as well, which is a very interesting game that only exists physically. You cannot play this game digitally. You can only get it on a Switch cartridge, which is an interesting concept. And I like that aspect, as well as all the anime or Anime Limited for providing this country and other countries with a lot of anime on distribution, as well as bringing films to this country, which is nice. I do really appreciate that, as well as a company that do partner with called Tiger Labs, who have been putting a lot of anime soundtracks on vinyl, which I do appreciate that for people who want to hear their favorite soundtracks and very obscure soundtracks on vinyl for the most part. But Recess, do you have anything you want to talk about in terms of 2022?
Yeah, just one recent highlight. I watched My Neighbor Totoro in theatre, so that was really fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really cool. I believe it was only on for a short amount of time in London, from like October to December or January maybe. Tickets were hard to get.
I can imagine.
But yeah, it was really fun. I think a lot of it was, like, for the most part, geared towards kids, but there were a lot of laugh out loud moments.
Oh, that's good.
Was it your first time seeing it?
Yes, so first time seeing. So I'd obviously seen the movie, but not seen the theatre production. And I feel that in the audience there were a lot of kids, but there were a lot of like people of mixed ages as well. Everyone was enjoying it. Everyone was laughing.
Yeah, because for a lot of those children, they've probably never seen it before.
Exactly. So it was like bringing, or I guess showcasing this to a completely new audience.
Yeah, because Totoro is a very kid-friendly-ish
Yeah.
character, just like this huge raccoon bear thing.
Yeah. And I feel how they did that as well. That character live on stage, that was really good.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
So that was fun.
That's cool. Right. We're kind of done with 2022 for the most part, but we've got to look to the future now. Most anticipated for 2023. Now, we will say that although these are things that are speculated or confirmed to be released in 2023, that might change. Some of these are just things we think are going to get released. Things can change, so obviously I don't want to hear anyone in the comments, oh, this didn't come out in 2023. You know, I'm not even going to get into that because I know what some people are like. Owl, what are you looking forward to next
Of course,
year?
it would be Tekken 8.
Tekken 8.
Tekken 8. News on Tekken 8. Hopefully it gets released next year. If not, then it doesn't matter. Just Tekken 8. And then 2 films that I'm looking forward to so far would definitely be the Super Mario movie.
Oh, yeah.
And Transformers Rise of the Beasts. I'm looking forward to that as well. So I'd like to see where that goes. But yeah, I mean, I was going to say another one, but no. I told Raccoon off air.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you after.
Oh, boy. Okay. I'll go through mine. I got 6 things I'm really looking forward to this year, all varied. Literally just confirmed we've canonically, technically not talked about it on the podcast, but weirdly enough, I am going to talk about it on the next podcast, so I'm not going to say too much here because I've got lots to say. And that is going to be for Crash Team Rumble, which is the next Crash Bandicoot game. We still don't really know what exactly this is. There's speculations it might be free to play. It seems to be some sort of like PvP team-based game, battle royale thing. I think this game has a lot of potential to be a massive thing. When you're looking at games like Fall Guys and Rumbleverse, ironically, and what's the one that DC put up? Metaverse. It has potential to be something like that. It has the backing of people like Microsoft and Activision. At the same time, that could be its Achilles heel. Those companies are super greedy corporations that are most likely going to monetize this and potentially destroy it because they're just looking at money at the end of the day. If it is free to play, that's what might happen. Luckily, we have developer Toys for Bob, who are very passionate when it comes to platformers and games like that. They were the ones partly responsible for the Crash Reignited. For the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, as well as Crash 4, which I know is very divisive along Crash fans, but to be honest, some of the Crash fans who don't like that, fuck off. It has a lot of potential. I do like the concept of having Crash Bandicoot characters team up and kind of fight each other in team-based kind of objective goals. The idea that you can maybe almost kind of customize a team and kind of have like villains and heroes. Even in the trailer itself, there's a really interesting concept where you see Coco, Crash Bandicoot's sister, use Uka Uka, the evil mask, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. And also the prospect of new characters as well being introduced, like this. I don't know if the character has an official name yet, but people are just calling it the Cat Bat. It's like a cat and a bat that's just there. It was teased in Crash 4, and I guess this was them teasing this game. So Interesting to see that. I know there's leaked artwork of some of the newer characters. This game cannot be... They can't be stingy with characters with this, because the Crash Bandicoot series has over 50 characters to choose from, not including these new ones, so I need to see every character. People have done some digging and some diving. It seems like some playable characters are confirmed. My boy Ripperoo is apparently going to be playable. He's apparently going to be a launch character from what people seem to think, as well as other characters. I can't wait to see how he's going to play, and other characters. I'm just really excited to hopefully see this game be good. I want it to be that kind of game that I get home from work and I'm like, no, I just one game. No, I just got to play it for 1 hour. I just got to get my rank up. You know, I want that. The same thing that was with Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, and I think they could do it as long as greed and other things aren't too big of a factor. Already mentioned the Super Mario Brothers movie. Once again, this has a lot of potential. This is coming from Illumination Studios. What we've seen so far, minus voice acting and some character designs, it's looking pretty good. I can't wait to see this film. I think regardless, it's going to be an interesting one. Even if it's bad, we're going to be making fun of it, and it's going to be iconic for that matter. Even if it's good, that's just another really great movie, and I guess in a weird way, just Nintendo and Illumination just showing everyone how it's done for the most part. Number 4 is, this is not intentional, is going to go to Resident Evil 4's reimagining remake. This is really interesting because this is a remake of regarded as one of the best games of all time. I don't think it is. I honestly think this remake will be better than the original. I think I'm going to like it way more than that game, and I'm very excited to see its direction, especially coming from the Resident Evil 2 and 3 reimagining. I do have a lot of faith in this game. Regardless, it's going to be a very interesting beast. Number 3, not intentional once again, is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, touted as the last Guardians film. Not sure what exactly that means. I don't know if they're never going to do a Guardians film after this, or if they're going to have a reset. I don't know. Really interested in this film. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with it. It definitely looks like it's going to be emotional, kind of out there, kind of bizarre. Yeah, just really excited. Number 2 is going to go to Mina the Hollower, which is an upcoming game from Yacht Club, the people who made Shovel Knight, who previously worked for Way Forward. This is their next game. I am going to specify I did back this game on Kickstarter, so I'm either going to be extremely biased towards this game or its harshest critic because I put money into it.
Yeah.
So it's a really fun kind of like classic Castlevania, like 8-bit, 16-bit game following Mina, who's like a little mouse character with a whip. She's kind of like trying to save the world in this very gothic aesthetic. Love the game so far. I've been following the progress. I'm really looking forward to this game to finally get released. And number 1, this game was announced back in, I think, 1865. People have been waiting for it ever since. It finally got a little bit more confirmation that it should be coming out soon. People have been quite vicious and adamant about this game actually getting its release. People are thirsty. People are angry. People are tired.
People are hungry.
Emotions are high. I am, of course, talking about Hollow Knight Silksong.
Boom.
This game has a lot to live up to. I know for a fact when this game comes out, people are going to say it's disappointing because it's technically been in development forever. Like, listen, COVID happened. This game is being made by 2 guys. One of them went and had a kid. You can't expect this game to just appear, I'm afraid. Yes, it is bizarre that they just confirmed it and it went silent for 2 years, but still. Once again, with Resident Evil 4, I think this is a game I'm going to really like. I think I'm actually going to like it more than Hollow Knight. Something about it, something the way they've done and other aspects, I think I'm just really going to gel with this one. So I can't wait to see it and hopefully enjoy it. And hopefully it'll be just as iconic as and amazing as the first game. But those are my most anticipated. Recess, I think you have some stuff you want to shout out to.
Several here. Most anticipated games, Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh yeah.
So the open world game of the Wizarding World, I guess. Set in the 1890s. I say open world, I think it's part open world. You can kind of explore Hogwarts at the start, and then I think you have to achieve... Yeah, no more. I think you have to achieve certain things, and then you can kind of roam the rest of the world. But yeah, I've been looking at like the gameplay that they've been releasing. I think it looks really cool.
It's a sneaky big one.
Yeah.
Because it could be really good, or I think it could also be really bad.
This is it.
Obviously,
sorry, go on.
Obviously, the reputation of J.K. Rowling is obviously going to damage it a little bit because she's just a terrible person, unfortunately. But I think this is going to be one that I think everyone's going to be interested. Same with like the Mario film. If it's bad, we're going to have a lot of fun making fun of it. If it's good, then Harry Potter fans hopefully get the game they've always wanted. I guess.
Exactly. There's a lot you can do. So I feel that yes, hype is there, but also maybe set expectations. It might not be what you're expecting. We'll see. Yeah, and then you won't be disappointed.
Exactly. That's how I go about most things.
And then second game, Hades 2.
Oh yeah.
So the follow-up to 2018's Hades, where you're playing as Zagreus's sister, I believe, Melanoi. If I've butchered the name, I'm sorry. I'm gonna guess, we don't know much about it. I'm gonna guess it's a similar setup. Fight, die, repeat. But like Hades was amazing. Recommend that. So yeah, looking forward to Hades 2. Hollow Knight Silksong is on my list.
Of course.
I was a bit weary of mentioning it because I thought that game was going to be released like for 5 years now. So I don't know if it's going to be released next year, but it's going to get a release sometime.
It was shown off at the Xbox presentation thing they did. Mm-hmm. And Xbox have specifically stated that every game that was shown off there would be releasing in the next 9 months.
Ooh,
so Hollow Knight should in theory release then, but obviously things can change.
Yeah. Okay, I'm hyped for that.
Yeah.
The last one I will mention is the new one from Studio Ghibli. So currently titled How Do You Live? Supposedly released in Japan at least in July. So from director Miyazaki, so who did Spirited Away and then My Neighbor Totoro. And he actually came out of retirement for this one. But yeah, deliberately taking their time with this. I think the first 30 minutes of the movie has taken 3 years to make.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to that one.
I think this is like kind of his final film at this point.
So that's it from me.
Okay. Personal goals and plans for 2023 as we kind of literally plan for the next year. Al, do you want to have anything you want to specify?
No, not really.
Okay. I've got a couple things that I'm kind of hoping to achieve next year. I mean, I just want to watch and read and play more things. I didn't play enough games or do enough things this year, partly because I was mainly dealing with my house and organizing things. So now that that's done, I'm kind of hoping to do more of that for the most part. Another weird one as well was I kind of want to get more flexible physically. Kind of funny story. So I was playing Twister like you do, and I kind of hurt my hip. And that was a bit worrying because I'm not an old man. So yeah, I need to fix that real quick because I'm not gonna be a 45-year-old acting like a 65-year-old. That's not happening. Another one which is quite exciting is I just want to get more into making videos again for this channel and that, because it's been a while since I've done anything besides the podcast, and I do kind of miss it. And now that things are more organized, I'm kind of ready to do that for the most part, and I've got lots of ideas that will hopefully come to fruition. I'll kind of explain it in a little bit. And the last thing as well is quite an ambitious thing, which I'm gonna say, and I'm not really gonna go into too much details, but I am going to try and aim to do, or at least kind of get off the ground, filming a pilot for a TV series. And I'm gonna leave it at that for the most part. So we'll see what happens. Recess.
For me, similar to your first point, read more, to be fair. I've been reading a lot of the Game of Thrones books this year. I've got 3 more to read, so I want to finish off those. And then there's also some books that I recently found out about called the Dandelion Dynasty. So that's like a set of 4 books. I think the 4th is released in January. But they've been described as like Game of Thrones, but steeped in like Chinese folklore. So fantasy books. There's going to be war, gods, politics. So yeah, looking forward to those.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, we're pretty much at the end of the podcast. Is there anything else anyone wants to mention that's just kind of doesn't really fall into any of these categories for the most part?
Not from me.
On that note, I guess I kind of just want to thank everyone for kind of like enjoying and listening to the podcast this year. It's been kind of a successful year to some extent. I know as of right now, it's don't have like the biggest views or the biggest subscribers, but I do appreciate the fact that people clearly taking like an interest in enjoying the podcast, and I really do appreciate that because it does take a while sometimes to do these podcasts, especially at the beginning of the year when I had some like things come up which really took away a lot of my free time, and it became very difficult sometimes to actually even want to do the podcast. It was a real slog. So knowing that people actually enjoyed this podcast, it was really really nice to see at the end of the day. I also want to thank everyone who's been on the podcast: Al, Recess, Ace, and Ferret, of course. Massive thanks for kind of helping out with some of these episodes and kind of making them really fun for the most part. And yeah, I guess I kind of want people to, I guess, be a little bit more accepting and kind to people this year, because things are getting a bit tough right now. The world is changing, and to some people it's quite scary. People have obviously not reacted very well to change, and if the world is going to progress and even exist, we need to like stop bullshitting each other and stop all this rubbish for the most part, because it is getting a bit distressing seeing how certain people are acting. I understand everyone's different and there was going to be people disagreeing, but some of it is just ridiculous. I'm looking at the way we're going about with some things and I'm just like, boy, I don't even think we have 5 years, because it's just rough. I'm partly disappointed in a lot of people this year, the human race. I know I'm saying this as if I'm standing on some kind of pedestal, as if I can look down, but it's my opinion. Yeah, no, some people were just truly awful to each other, and that's really upsetting. And these people who have been awful to others, they're not even arguably the most important people. Some people are making this world pretty bad for the people that do matter, which is the children. You're kind of messing things up for them, and to do that, quite selfish. But I would ask everyone just to kind of be nicer to each other, just to be more respectful, just kind of try and understand people as well, see things from people's perspective. I think too many people assume nowadays, and they're too quick to get angry and to get into fights thanks to things like Twitter and that. Yeah, just be respectful and just kind of be understanding for the most part, especially during the Christmas season, where I know obviously there's always a debate of, oh, you got to say Christmas, don't say Happy Holidays, and that kind of debate and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I kind of just hope that everyone for next year can be a lot nicer and things can be a bit better, because I've noticed, unfortunately, over the last few years there's been a really weird trend where we've had one really bad year and then the next year has been better. Mainly referencing COVID with 2020, then 2021 was a vast improvement. Then this year with constant conflict with other countries and other people. So I'm hoping that that streak kind of ends and it just kind of gets a bit better. But yeah, we have the video of the episode, which I straight up just couldn't find one. I couldn't really find something that can be so bold as to be the video to end the year. So there's going to be something there. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but let's just say it's going to be a surprise in the description and the download link for this episode. But yeah, anything else you guys want to say before we wrap this episode up?
Not from me.
Fair enough. Once again, I want to thank Al. I want to thank Recess for being on this episode. Another lengthy end to the podcast. We're gonna go on a little bit of a break, obviously because it's Christmas. The podcast is not going to return until the 9th of January. We're actually going to come back earlier as soon as we, based on times and all that, we technically recorded this a lot earlier and put it up. This should have gone up by Christmas, hopefully. If it hasn't gone up by Christmas, then I'm probably dead, but we'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. I feel like there's something else I need to mention, but I can't remember. Have a good holidays. Please look after yourself. Please look after others. Don't do anything stupid. Please come back alive to the podcast. Podcast tour is going to be quite a big one because since 206, a lot of trailers have released. We had the Game Awards, and a lot of people just went a bit apeshit and just released every trailer coming out next year. So got that to look forward to, as well as a certain special date that's happening the first week of January. And if you guys are lucky, you might get an extra video before the year is up, but I'll say shush to that. I guess I'll end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon.
I'm the Indigenous Owl.
I was Recess.
And we will see you on the next podcast in 2023. All right, see you later, guys.